It is 6:38. We will reconvene open session and report on any reportable action items taken in closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. On item number A1, the claim from Raquel Torres on a motion by Councilmember Peñalosa and seconded by Vice Mayor Reyes in a 5-0 vote, that the council voted to deny the claim. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Mayor Reyes. And
Salute, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to lead us in an invocation? If not, did you want to lead us in an invocation?
Thank you for allowing us to stay safe. Thank you for, we give thanks for the ability to do neighbors, these schools of the resources entrusted into us, let us hand guide our decisions.
Thank you very much. Please, a moment of silence and an invocation for your personal intentions. Thank you. You may be seated. We will now go into oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the council on any matter of interest, whether on the agenda or not. Please address all items not scheduled for public hearing at this time. Unless additional time is authorized by the council, all commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. Please keep your mask on as you approach. And speak into the microphone, please.
Okay. Thank you, Council, Chairman, for allowing us to be here today. My name is Arturo Rodriguez, and I'm the board president of Poplar Community Service District. But today I wear the hat of a nonprofit, Central Valley Empowerment Alliance, which has taken up the job to just identify some of the needs that we have in our local community, and identified that we've identified a place where we can definitely be partners in, and in working with some of our community who are struggling to find housing and possibly chronic. We have discussed how to get your needs met, and part of that was to actually come and address council and say what are your top priorities that you're looking at. And we have a couple of gentlemen here, and one is running a little late. He's like 3 minutes out, and we wanted to respect the social distancing and kind of pick somebody to come from that group to speak for those people that are in those regional areas in our rivers, and we want to work with the city on finding a solution. You know, I think one of the big requests from folks that are living along the riverbanks is just the need to have a place where you can go to the restroom without worrying about contaminating the environment, and especially our waterways, and a way to make that happen. So I spent the last about 2 years of working in Oakland and working in shelters, and I worked in the camps, and I got to know a lot of faces, and I got to know a lot of programs, and I got to see the ones that worked, and I got to see the ones that didn't, and I learned everybody's name, and I got all the resources, and my goal was to come back to Tulare County and help develop some of those that worked. You know, but the restroom situation isn't, you know, that one that they had trouble with. That was it was taken care of, and so here I think it's a good place to start. I know that you guys have been working on some pretty extensive programs, but I think the end user is still to as part of the end users are unable to see the results of those good programs that you guys have in mind. And so that's I have. I'll let them speak for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Gilbert Sandoval. I'm 53 and disabled. I hear all these wonderful programs about housing the homeless, and yet I've been calling these programs, and either I can't get a hold of them, or they don't call back, or I've tried emails also as well. And some of them, some of those phone numbers have gone dead for whatever reason, and also the emails, because they tell me that the programs are no longer in existence now that the programs are over with. I go, well, I mean, I've been trying to get a hold of these people, but yet I'm still, not housed. I'm still out in the street, and I was wondering, all these wonderful programs, are they working? Are they really working, really? Or they're not? I mean, why am I still not housed? I mean, that's a concern of mine. I tried calling. I got so fed up, I stopped calling. And I was wondering, one told me that the Project Room Key was over with. I was told by one, and I said, okay, so I quit and stopped calling. So I wish I see a lot of people still homeless, and just the ones like I am. They go, what happened? What happened to all these programs that were supposed to offer us, and for those who want to help and want to get out of homelessness, and been trying, but yet we're still homeless, and that's my only I guess complaint or gripe. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mr. Sandoval, this is oral communications. I really can't respond to a lot of yours, but there is information. If you leave your phone number, someone will call you with regard to the resources that are available to you, and with regard to the navigation center that is forthcoming, would be providing some services. But please leave a contact name and a phone number that they can reach you. Please. Please come forward. Thank you.
Hello, how are you guys today? My name is Justin Hall. I'm part of the homeless art here who brought us together to help come out here and talk to you guys about trying to bring more resources to us or help us out, bathroom means or showering or whatever we could actually get going on or something. I'm going on homeless right now about almost 5 to 6 years. I know quite a bit of the people up and down here in Porterville and everything else. I've been trying to help out for some time now. But it's just trying to get resources and people to actually listen to us has been pretty difficult lately, especially the last couple of years. I mean, if you're out and about trying to get a job and all this other stuff, it's really hard to do anything, especially being on the river. I mean, if you get stuck on the other side of the river when the water's flowing, there's only like 2 or 3 spots to the whole place you can actually get across without actually getting in trouble and everything like that. So it's really hard to do anything in Porterville to a certain point of all that. I mean, we actually do need resources. Actually, the older people. There's some old people out there. I mean, the problem is that they're to the point where they can't move or they can't transport themselves to their own places, medical-wise and all this other stuff, that are actually stuck out there still. And I'm not really sure what else to really say on a lot of it besides that there's just people out there that really need some help, but at the same time, they just need the better choice or better access to the resources. Like if you don't have a phone, you don't have internet, computer, or a car, you're stuck here. You can't really move or do anything, especially if you don't have a vehicle. You don't have a contact information or any way for anybody to get a hold of you, you're stuck there. And it's very difficult for us to try to do anything. Besides that, it's just, what is it? It's all the transportation more than anything, but it's knowing the resources and actually being hand, because the helping hands, they give out food every week or every day for about an hour. Weekends, we don't get food. What is it, the mission, we only get a few beds. If you're not there like 2 hours beforehand waiting to get a seat, you won't get a bed. And even though that you're waiting in line, there's a chance that you're not getting a bed because there's only so many there. I read up they're doing a program now for 130 beds, or 160 beds or something. It's really nice, but it's 100 beds compared to the 300, 400, 500 people we got here in Porterville that are just literally just sitting back. And a lot of them are kids. You'd be amazed on actually lately how many kids are out there. And it's not because of drugs. It's because of their own families and all this other stuff. And most of the people out there stuck on the drugs isn't stuck on it. They're out there and it's right there in their face. I've plenty of people are not liking it just because of that. I mean, you'd be amazed at how many people get flooded with it just because they're stuck there on the river. 15 minutes. Sorry, guys.
Mr. Hall, do you have a contact phone number? Please leave it, and someone will call you. Please leave it with staff right here. Thank you very much. Please, or we are going to now move on with the oral communications. Do we have anything that has come in electronically? Please.
First communication is from Catherine Capone. This is regarding the Tcag Measure R Citizens Oversight Committee report. The Citizens Can you time this? I'm sorry. Can you time it? The Citizens Oversight Committee meeting did not have a quorum, and so the committee could not vote on items. The last time the committee had a quorum was May 13th, 2019. Since then, we have had meetings on November 4th, 2019, February 10th, 2020, May 11th, 2020, and today's meeting, August 10th, 2020. During the meeting, I suggested that Tcag make filling vacant positions and reaching out to members who have not attended meetings a priority. The May and August meetings were held by phone. I recommended that the next meeting be held by video conference. For the record, I attended each of the above listed meetings. As a matter of information, the committee heard reports by Ted Smalley, Leslie Davis, and others from Tcag on the following matters: distribution of Measure R, fiscal year 1920 fourth quarter reports, fiscal year 1920 third quarter reports, review of Measure R revenues and expenses. The committee had requested information in greater detail on bike, pedestrian, and environmental projects, and we were presented a brief report by representatives of the City of Visalia and the County of Tulare on completed and future projects. Committee members asked clarifying questions. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the bike and ped paths that were studied for Bartlett Park and Balch Park were both considered too expensive and too difficult to obtain permits. Tcag has dropped these two projects in our 190 corridor from consideration. Within the Porterville area, Measure R is partly funding the Tulu River Phase 3 project. In the third quarter of 1920, funded 4 lighted crosswalks for the Rails to Trails project. As a matter of comparison, these are the following expenditures for Measure R during the third quarter of 1920. City of Visalia, $716,000, Wood Lake, $86,000, Porterville, $46,000, Tulare, $0, Tulare County, $64. The fourth quarter 1920 report is not complete at this time. Rocky Hill Bike and Ped project is fully funded and is expected to move forward in October 2020. Measure R is used as a flexible source of transportation money, which is used to leverage other funding sources and to complete types of projects which other services do not fund. 14% of the Measure R funds can be used for bike, ped, and environmental projects. Visalia is also using ATP funds, Enhanced Environmental Mitigation Grant, Community Corps, and Urban Tree Foundation, and Urban Greening Grant grants to fund amenities such as irrigation and landscaping along the bike and ped trails. Mr. Smalley provided a verbal overview of the advantage of obtaining a bond, which would allow Tcag to fund projects ahead of Measure R money timeline. The current historically low interest rate allows Tcag to save money by doing the project sooner and saving the money that would have been paid in higher construction costs in the future. The next bond is expected to go forward in the next 30 days. Highway 190 project is planned as a $25 million project in the next 5 years. Measure R provides $10 to $12 million a year in road rehabilitation throughout Tulare County. Measure R monies have been used as part of the Highway 99 enlargement project. A state grant of $80 million was obtained with the use of $8 million in local Measure R funds.
Thank you.
Next email is from Joaquin Harden. Hair and nail salons are being destroyed during the governor's shutdown orders. In Tulare County, this shutdown order is causing people to do things in order to make a living that is not recommended or safe, like home visits, etc. Now that unemployment benefits have largely run out for the few who qualified, people are desperate for income to pay bills and feed their families. Why the governor has targeted hair and nail salons is a mystery. Show us one study that proves that there has been even one case of COVID-19 transmission at a hair or nail salon. There isn't one, as hair and nail salons already are one of the safest environments possible, operating with hundreds of hours of safety training even before the pandemic. Yet people can crowd into Save Mart or Walmart or Lowe's, and that is perfectly fine. The governor allows people to protest without masks or social distancing, and that is allowed. The governor does not even recommend against protesting. The fact that the city of Porterville is enforcing this ridiculous shutdown order and threaten the revocation of city business licenses and fines is nothing more than a politically motivated, shameful act. Salon owners have attempted to contact council members to discuss this issue with zero response back. My husband has attempted to contact Councilman Stowe and is still waiting for a call back. Every nail and hairstylist knows that most council members are receiving a fixed income that hasn't dropped due to this pandemic. While our salon has been able to make ends meet so far, we have roughly 10 girls in our salon that have no income, none. I just wonder what the anti-business city council members' attitudes would be if they were wondering where their next meal was coming from. Next is from Edith.
For the record, I have not been contacted by John Hart.
Next email is from Edith Levon. It's time Porterville stepped up and started treating the mosquito infestation and participated in mosquito abatement. Many citizens are being eaten alive, literally. I have personally used 3 tubes of hydrocortisone cream and numerous flying insect spray. My yard has no standing water. One neighbor floods my yard and complains about the pests. If you follow Facebook, you will find numerous complaints and no real forms of relief. Please investigate this and hold a public hearing. I think you'll be flooded with complaints. Number 2, since the last time my evenings were invaded by mortars, fireworks, was Friday the 14th, the problem is still a problem. So I'm telling you there is less. It has not stopped. Ban all fireworks in the city. Next is from Sherry Edwards.
Excuse me, Mr. Lawless, would you please hold comments in the audience? They detract from what's being said in here. Thank you. Please continue.
Next is from Sherry Edwards. Dear Mr. Lawless and Porterville City Council, as a family, we are greatly concerned for the small business owners of our community. At one point, small business was the backbone of the community. With the restrictions of COVID-19, small businesses across the nation are threatened with permanent closure. We feel far safer going to a small family-owned business than the large corporate-owned grocery, hardware, and other shops that are considered essential. I've had 2 occasions to go into a doctor's office in Porterville. I had the option to go into the waiting room, but chose to remain in my car until called on. When the beauty shops were open, I received very specific instructions from my stylist before my appointment time. I was to remain in my car until called into the building, was to have my temperature taken and sanitize my hands well and wear a face mask at all times, as did the stylist. There were only a few operators working at a time. The facility was immaculate. I felt safe in this environment. These people need their jobs. They want to work. Please reconsider reopening our small businesses. Those who don't feel safe have the option to stay home. We have been very conservative with our interaction with others, but feel that small businesses are being discriminated against when it is okay for Target, Walmart, Save Mart, Lowe's, etc. are allowed to be open. The people of Porterville need to be free to use their good common sense and be able to use the establishments necessary for their personal needs. Sincerely, James, Cheryl, Kayleen, and Lachelle Edwards. Next communication is from John Coffey. I know that the council has been talking to other cities about this subject. However, in my opinion, the time has come for Porterville to lead the way by banning fireworks within the city limits of Porterville. This would be a great relief to our pets and to our veterans. Please don't study this to death. Be the leader of the county and just move on to enact a ban. Yes, I know some organizations will say they need their booth to support their organization, but I say to them, how do you support yourselves before Porterville allowed fireworks? Again, for our pets and veterans, ban fireworks within Porterville, except for the city program. Thank you, John Coffey. Next is from Teresa Falkenberg. It's time, beyond time, to open the town up and let people get back to the business of living their lives and providing for their families. 5 months ago, we were all asked to stay in place for 2 weeks to flatten the curve. 5 months later, where are we? My sister is a small business owner in Porterville. Her business has been closed since March, only to open for 3 weeks and then be forced to close again, and she and her family have suffered tremendously. Please let these good people of Porterville get back to their businesses, make a living, and contribute to the success of your town. If there are people who are not ready to be out and about, they have the choice to stay home. Will you be there for the families who lose everything? Will you put food on their table? We've all been able to shop big box stores, yet our kids can't go to school. We've all been able to protest in the street, yet we can't get our hair cut. It's time to stand up for the citizens of Porterville. Let them know that they count on you. Sincerely, Teresa Falkenberg.
That was it. I believe there's someone that would like to speak in oral communications.
I guess.
Please state your name, and
Ross
you do
Hernandez.
have 3 minutes. Go
Ross
ahead.
Hernandez. I'm here about the issue about the homeless, that they have no, I like to bring up at the next meeting, issue about the facility being, restrooms put out the river for the homeless. Could get put on the agenda for the next meeting, if possible.
This is oral communications. We're here to listen to what you have to say.
We just need some bathrooms out for the homeless at the river. I mean, going to the restroom out there, I mean, I understand it's our own thing out there, but it would be a big service to us if we could get it brought up on the agenda, the restrooms out there. But let the people know, the city know it'd be possible to somehow get porta potties out there. That's all.
Thank you. Since we have no other oral communications, none others have come in? Okay. We will now move on into reports. This is the time for all committee, commission, board reports, subcommittee reports, and staff informational items. Commissions have not met. Is that correct? Okay.
There was just one, and they're not reporting tonight personally.
Thank you very much. Then we will move on into the AB 1234 reports. This is the time for all AB 1234 reports required pursuant to Government Code 53232.3. The first one is the Local Agency Formation Commission. The meeting was held on August the 5th via teleconference. The city manager and I participated. Approval of the June 3rd minutes. And there were 3 items of action. The first one was for the extraterritorial service agreement. Tulare County submitted a request for the service agreement for approximately 126.9 acres of land to be served by the city of Visalia, located at the southeast corner of Caldwell and State Route 99. The purpose was to set the terms and conditions for the extension of sewer services from the city of Visalia. The purpose for this extension of sewer services is to serve the development of Sequoia Gateway Commerce Park project, which is a proposed highway commercial regional commercial center along State Route 99. The draft service agreement between the agencies providing and receiving service was included in the ESA application. Some discussion, motion made to staff, recommendations with emphasis for the provision of sewer service. The action passed unanimous, 5-0. With regard to Senate Bill 414, there was a letter of opposition. On July the 23rd, CalAFCO issued an urgent request to submit letters of opposition regarding amendments to Senate Bill 414. In the proposed amendments, it would remove LAFCO's authority in the formation of the new water authority, a public agency that would otherwise be formed at the discretion and by the authority of LAFCO. LAFCOs would be removed from several critical notification points and removal of funding for LAFCO. The letters were mailed, brought to the meeting for the affirmation. The action passed unanimous, 5-0. The next item was the cancellation of the September 2nd meeting. The next meeting will be October the 7th at 2 o'clock, and that concludes that report. We will now move into the Eastern Tule Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Vice Mayor Reyes.
Thank you. I'll be reporting on the meeting that happened Thursday, July 2nd. A few items we took action on, of course, receiving the minutes and the committee reports from the Finance and Executive Committee. Also, we took action to receive the financial statements and to pay the bills that were due. There was also action taken to approve the budget for the 2020 to 2021 budget, and also the forms and the budget forms that the county requires to file that budget. as well. There was discussion on the disbursement of funds and who the signatories would be, which would be the chairman of the board, as well as members of the finance committee. There was also a call for the first quarterly funds. Those are the funds that help to keep the GSA in operation. We also received a report from Thomas Harder and Co. On the land subsidence management plan, which was then referred back to committees for discussion. And that concludes the action items that we took. And the next meeting was held on the 6th of August. And I'll ask Mr. Knight to make that report.
Yes, August 6th, we met via Zoom, given the current conditions of the COVID restrictions. During that meeting, we handled approving the board minutes and financial statements. Two of the big action items was to further discuss the presentation of the subsidence report by Mr. Harder. In addition to that, the proposal of the groundwater management software Basin Safe program was displayed, and action was taken to participate in that. That will be continued to be rolled out. The other approval was the discussion of the draft rules and regulations. The board did speak of that during the meeting and decided to circulate that through the committees one more time. The stakeholder committee has already met on that this week. The executive committee will meet, and in hopes to bring that back during the first meeting in September, which is the first Thursday in September, for finalization and exception of any comments. There is also there's a public hearing scheduled for October 6th. As part of that public hearing, there's been some circulation of documentation for a rate structure that has been developed for groundwater extraction. That will be a public hearing for a 218 to consider implementation of that rate structure for the Eastern Tulu GSA area. I believe that's on the high notes.
Thank you very much. We'll move on into the Porterville Area Development Association Ad Hoc Committee. Vice Mayor, do you have anything? Any input on that one?
Just continued discussions on how the project was going to be moving forward and the timelines as such. As you well know, that the current situation with COVID, as well as the project duration and looking at the opportunities to complete the project and all of the different amenities that were involved are still in discussion and still looking to be met with the achievable funds and actions to do this project, which is a large project for the tribe, and as well it's within city limits, so of course there's a major effect to the city. So continually looking at that, as well as the agreements that have been made before, and being able to uphold all those. And it's a continuing dialogue, and I know Councilmember Stowe was there, and I don't know if he has any more to add.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Pretty much you covered it, but there was one thing that they requested from us if we could. I guess the project is still held up in Washington, D.C., and so they asked us to give their support to contact maybe Congressman McCarthy and send a letter to him, or have even call his representative to move it along and complete the paperwork so they can get started.
Thank you very much. Okay, the COVID-19 State Unified Support Team. I'll go ahead and share, and then I'll ask Mr. Lawless if there's anything that should be added to it. I attended the Unified Support Team visit on the 13th of August. It was the Tulare County Department of Public Health from the State Department as well. And it was to have conversation with representatives from state entities, both state and county efforts. I believe that there was only one other council member that was on electronically, and that joined Zoom, but the city managers that were in attendance via Zoom were Mr. Lawless, the city manager from Exeter, Farmersville. In person were the city managers from Visalia and Lindsay. This was specific to city concerns from all of us, or all of those that were invited to attend the conference. I unfolded the dialogue for Porterville, and I stated that I was there to be proactive versus reactive, that a lot of decisions had been made, and that we continued to move forward in the resiliency of Porterville. I stated that we had a tragic fire in February, that we had lost 2 firefighters and the library. We came together as a community and we mourned with the families and with the department for approximately 2 weeks. And as we continued to move forward toward the resiliency of the city, the executive order was put in place for COVID, and now we had to deal with the pandemic. This pandemic and its effect and how it moved in the direction toward the businesses, the healthcare industries, the schools, but I was voicing in particular to the messaging, how it came from the state to the counties, and I stated that the businesses in Porterville, that there are several that have not opened since March, that they were hurting, and that the messaging was not consistent, and I reiterated, state, county, to everyone with the guidelines, with the things that were put out. And there is frustration that our businesses continue to struggle. Other managers and other cities began to identify the needs of their cities, and I added that the city of Porterville, that since the pandemic began taking all the precautions, and that the city had been working on rotating coverage schedules, that from the beginning, we had been in constant communication and supportive of Sierra View Medical Center, meeting with them, sharing the information, and how it has impacted the healthcare community. The CEO from the hospital had met with us, and I specifically stated that she expressed it was running 2 hospitals in one, the non-COVID patients and the COVID patients. And then what concerned was for the taxing of its staff as the pandemic continues. The financial aspect as well with the non-elective surgeries. One of the city managers expressed his concern for his small city in the area of public safety. I echoed the sentiment to our fire department, who lost 2 firemen in February in the tragic fire. What I also shared, because you had the state health representative there and the county, that we also had 4 firemen that are still or are out with PTSD. And now, in the last few days, we are dealing with fire season, and our firefighters are being sent out on calls. I was inclusive of our police department. They are out there continuing to work amidst the COVID contact and with others. I also stated that we needed communication with regard to the Porterville Developmental Center, that initially we had been given a Cal OES contact. We had had communication and it ceased. I acknowledge the appreciation of maintaining the state testing at the Veterans Memorial Building. Somewhere through all the discussions that were going on, I emphasized the Navigation Center with the emphasis on the homeless populations, that we as a city had been working on that for quite some time, and that we were waiting on behalf for Turning Point, who is the contractor for the service, that they had been patiently waiting for the suppression and monitoring unit and had been working with an affiliation, and that they're still trying to get that resolved. But because this is important, that the city council at the last council meeting authorized for daytime services to be provided. Moving into conversations, enforcement was a subject, education was stressed. There were several discussions. State representatives spoke of state licensing when it came to the ABC licenses, the hair, the nail salons, and the barber shops. With regard to the restaurants, on the subject matter with the responsibility of restaurants, I asked for a clarification, and the question that I asked was, is the county responsible for the restaurants? And the response that I received was yes. As we were going to near and into the wrap-up session, Mr. Britt, County CAO, gave Porterville credit for taking the pandemic seriously. In the wrap-up of the meeting, the state would be taking the information back of all the cities that were there that had presented to work with the area of Tulare County. Is there anything that should be added to that, Mr. Lawless?
No, I think you did a great job of summarizing it. I didn't know what to expect. I would tell you that I was underwhelmed. Disappointing to see only 2 members of council present. Porterville and Woodlake were represented. Vice Mayor of Visalia attended via Zoom. But that was it for elected officials attending, and then most of the city managers were either in presence or on Zoom like myself. I guess I was expecting, this is a team that's been assigned to try to lower cases, to reduce the number of positive cases and to, I would say, provide guidance on how to do that. And I don't remember receiving any guidance. You had representatives from CDPH, ABC, a number of, and these are all recorded meetings. I don't recall any real conversation during the city concerns standpoint of saying, here's particular policies or those sorts of things that could be adopted. So, and I given limited participation as well as limited guidance or advice or what might be coming from the state, I wouldn't say that it was a tremendously prosperous, for what was supposed to be the state's unified support team to try to decrease positivity and decrease positive cases. I just speak candidly.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the League of Cities, SSA San Joaquin South Valley Division meeting. I'm going to ask Councilmember Peñalosa to report on that one.
Thank you, Mayor. We had the San Joaquin Valley South Division meeting. I forget if it was on, let me open, sorry. I had the Zoom, I have the agenda open here. We had that meeting on August 13th, and so I know myself and the mayor were in that conversation, and there were several members elected across the southeastern part of the San Joaquin Valley, and so we had members from all over the region participate, and it was very an interesting and good educational webinar around the CARES Act funding and what we could qualify, what programs we could what things we could qualify and what things we would not qualify for funding. And so it was definitely worthwhile. I participated to just get an idea of what was happening with that funding and how it works a little bit better. And so I know that at the end of the day, our administrative part of our city, handles a lot of that and provides council with feedback. But I just really wanted to just get that technical aspect of how the funding works. I thought it was really beneficial, and I appreciated the California League of Cities providing that presentation to many of us that serve in our capacity as city council members and mayors. And so, yeah, that's pretty much sums up my participation, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to join future workshops and meetings around COVID and this funding.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the Tulu River Tribe Compact legislative hearing. I had the opportunity to speak at the state governmental organization hearing in support of the compact between the state of California and the Tulu River Tribe. I stated that the city and that the tribe had a strong relationship based on the mutual respect and collaboration of the successfully developed memorandum of understanding, and that it was of mutual benefit to both parties. The city strongly supports the contract and the proposed project, not only for the strong promotion of economic development, but also for the improved community services. And I was able to get in and out of there in 1 minute because that's all they gave me to speak. And that's just all I have to say on that one. It was an experience. We will move on to the next one, the Tulare County Association of Governments. I will carry that one over to the next council meeting. Tulare County Regional Transit Agency. Council Member Garola?
That's me. So this was a historical moment that has been a long time coming, and so I was very honored and humbled to be a part of that founding group. So the first meeting was held on August 17th at 2:30. I attended by Zoom, or I'm sorry, by teleconference. So the meeting began with administering the oath to the officers, and I'd like at this time to read who the officers are. So the officers, or the directors are Mary Waterman Philpott, with alternate Dave Hales from City of Exeter, Greg Gomez, alternate Tina Hernandez from the City of Farmersville, Pam Kimball, Brian Watson is the alternate from the City of Lindsay, myself with Monty Reyes as the alternate for the City of Porterville, Jose Zagala with the alternate Terry Sayer from the City of Tulare, Rudy Mendoza, and the alternate is Emmanuel Lamas from the City of Woodlake. Supervisor Crocker is with the Eddie Bellaro, Supervisor Eddie Bellaro as the alternate from the County Board of Supervisors. So that is who has been selected to serve on that. All were in attendance except for City of Exeter. So the oath of office was administered to both the directors and the alternates. The election and seating of the chair and vice chair of the board was the next item, and there was a rally of very many individuals who wanted to serve as the chair and vice chair. I placed my name in. It was seconded by Pam Kimball from Lindsay. I lost that round. I also lost the round for the vice chair. So Supervisor Crocker will be the chair. Mayor Segala will be the vice chair. Appointment of the Tcag director as the interim director for the board, and the secretary, well, Ted Smalley as the director, and that was approved. Request for Tcag to provide interim administrative and staff support. And I want to go through each item because this is the founding items for the development of this agency. Along with the office space, startup budget financing for TCRTA was approved. An appointment of county counsel as interim legal counsel was also approved, and there will be a proposed scheduled at the next meeting of when the agency will be meeting. Adoption of bylaws for TCRTA Board of Directors was also approved, along with the What was not approved as of yet is the adoption of conflict of interest, which is the Form 700. County Council is looking into if that could be incorporated with what we already have with the city, so that'll come back. Adoption of the CEQA procedures for CRTA was also approved, and adoption of the local debt policy was also approved. Director of Interim for Executive Director, Ted Smalley, was asked to file a notice for the joint powers agreement with the state of California, Secretary of State, along as to register the new agency with the California Secretary of State, notify the Tulare County Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector, that he has been appointed as the Auditor Treasurer for the new agency, and implement the Joint Powers Agreement and development of operational and capital budgets for TCRTA for 2021. Other business included, Councilman or Vice Mayor Reyes, you can jump in if I forget anything. The other information that was provided was that for the budget that'll be going to Tcag at their next meeting, is that we will be getting from Measure R 460,000 for TCATA with 100,000 per year. Then there's also going to be a special meeting next Monday at 1:30, August the 24th, to approve for Rich Tree to provide 10% of his time for expert consultation to TC, to the agency. I also brought up that an item that came up in the forum transit, which Mr. Tree had forwarded to me, and I thought was important, and that is that Caltrans is considering suspending the NTD reporting, which will result in local agencies losing millions of dollars. That would be $1 million for the city of Porterville in future FTA funding, and ask that that be placed on the next agenda. There's quite a few items I think that we need to start discussing. One of the other items I'm going to ask for is where are each of the agencies in terms of their transits? How soon can we get to electrification, since the city of Porterville is already there? So that was all the action that was taken at our first meeting. Again, it's a privilege to be there and represent the city of Porterville.
Thank you. Did you have anything to add to that?
I think, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but I think Member Gomez from Farmersville asked that there be a look into some of the fair alignment throughout the region as well. But that was, I think that Councilmember Garola summarized it very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, may I add something
Yes.
really fast?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's unfortunate that Councilwoman Gorilla wasn't able to get a seat, but hopefully we'll be able to still fully participate in the meetings, and I'm excited for this new agency that was formed, and a super important one. And before I was involved in local government, I know that there was a lot of work that was being done to get to this point. So there's a lot to get still ahead of us, but this is really a historic moment. So glad to be part of this along with each and every one of you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just make,
Please.
the MOU that Councilmember Grola mentioned was sent actually to the city attorney today for review, so that we can begin review of that. It is going to be considered by the TCR regional train. Yeah, I got to get TCRTA. I got a new acronym. I have to remember TCRTA at a special meeting, which would then come to you at your first meeting in September for consideration, given the city attorney and others are good with the MOU. And just to clarify, it's actually 25% of Mr. Tree's time, 10 hours a week. Serving. I apologize. I just wanted to clarify that that is what is proposed in the MOU.
The next meeting will be September 21st on a Monday at 2:30.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go on into staff informational reports.
Thank you, Your Honor. There are two reports provided, your monthly water conservation Phase 4 status update. Happy to report during the month, I guess the preceding month, so the month of July would be 22% savings, which actually a good number, I would say, for the summer months, which continues to track along at 26.6% cumulative. So we're still exceeding our goal of 26% conservation cumulatively. There were three notices, I may have miswritten that, notices of violation with 5 administrative citations issued. Secondly, also provided, it was a little ambiguous, or it was undetermined when the council considered the support letter for the Tribes Compact as the legislation, because it had not yet been identified what legislation was going to be amended to include the compact language. It ended up being Senator Dodd's legislation, SB 869. So a copy of that letter has been provided just for the official record.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the consent calendar. All consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these matters unless a request is made, in which event the item will be removed from the consent calendar. All items removed from the consent calendar for further discussion will be heard at the end of scheduled matters. Mr. Lawless, you said you had a conflict on 2?
I do, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. No conflicts on the others? Okay.
One question.
Please.
Consent, and it's just a simple question, and that is that on item number 2, that is a state well, but yet we're getting those parts. The state will be reimbursing us for that cost.
You want me to leave the room?
I was waiting for Javier, but
I can step out. So you can talk.
Okay. Mr. Lawless is stepping out because he has a conflict on that.
Oh, that's right. Okay, well, I'm going to assume that we're going to get that money back. I'm sure we will, since it's a state well. So I would
We are.
approve,
It's-
move that we approve consent items 1 through
it's reimbursed.
11 with the noted conflict.
Okay, we have a motion for items
I'll
1
second.
and a second. No further discussion, please call for vote.
Councilmember Garola,
Yes.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye, passes unanimous. 5-0, thank you.
And Councilmember Garola, the answer to your question was yes, according to Mr. Knight.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to scheduled matters.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have 4 items before the City Council this evening, as scheduled matters. The first is consideration of District 4 City Council member appointment in lieu of election, and Ms. Hildreth will provide that staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Lawless, Mayor, members of council. At the June 16th meeting, you will recall that you called for the election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, and consolidated with Tulare County to fill the 4-year term offices for districts 3, 4, and 5. At the close of the nomination period on August 7th, there was only one candidate, Monty Reyes, for District 4. And as such, you have the opportunity to consider a couple of options to fill that seat. So pursuant to Elections Code, you could either appoint to the office the person who has been nominated, which is Mr. Reyes, or you could appoint to the office any eligible voter if no one had been nominated. However, there was someone nominated. Or you could hold the election if either no one or only one person has been nominated. So due to there only being Mr. Reyes being qualified and nominated for that seat, the council can elect to appoint in lieu. So your choices are you could appoint in lieu, or you could have his name continue on the ballot and proceed with the election. So there are obviously cost efficiencies if an appointment is made, as it eliminates the necessity for the election in District 4 and the printing of ballots and the costs associated with that. So for your consideration, a draft resolution has been prepared should you wish to proceed with the appointment in lieu. However, I do want to note that if you do proceed in this fashion, it does eliminate the ability for someone to write in a candidate. So if we're available for questions, however, I'm sorry, I just lost if the council does want to make this appointment, they would not accept any of the write-in candidacies. And it also, you need to take action this evening, because if by the 75th day before the municipal election, which is August 20th, Thursday, if no person has been appointed, then the elections office will proceed with printing Mr. Reyes's name on the ballot. So you have until Thursday to make this decision.
Okay, Mayor, I'm not sure if we want to do this, but me either. I make a nomination that we appoint Mr. Vice Mayor Reyes as continue with his district as a council person.
I second that.
We have the motion made by Councilmember Stowe, the second by Councilwoman Gurrola. You are able to vote if you want. And there be no further discussion. Call for vote.
Just for the record,
Please.
Vice Mayor Reyes did ask me if he was conflicted on this, and I looked at this last election cycle, and the FPPC issued a clarification letter to make it clear that it's not a conflict for any council member who is subject to this to vote on it. So just wanted
Okay.
for the record.
Thank you. Call for vote, please.
Councilmember Gurrola,
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye. Passes unanimous, 5-0.
And also, just for the record, I was just teasing about it, I'm not sure, so, you know, I don't want people to think that I didn't want anything.
No, yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
just want to add congratulations to the Vice Mayor in his appointment for another 4 years. So congratulations.
Yes, he does an excellent job, so I'm very happy.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'll talk to you later, okay? In a good way. All right, we'll move on into item number 13.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next item is performance review of transit services and authorization to set a public hearing. And I'll say Mr. Knight's going to provide a staff report, although I know Mr. Tree is going to.
I see Mr. Tree.
Thank you, Mr. Lawless. Mr. Tree will be providing the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Knight, Mr. Lawless, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. You know, this is a good time to review the performance of your transit system. We've had a lot of activity due to the coronavirus. We've made some changes since the pandemic, and we continue to look for strategies to improve mobility within our community, as well as keep us financially sustainable for the future. Tonight, if I can get this clicker, there we go. Let's see. Thank you for the assistance. In the staff report, a rather lengthy staff report, thought it would be best to give you an overview, a presentation style for those that are, for the council that's attending from their home. That presentation was attached to the staff report, but I'd like to begin with just really giving you a review of the types of services that we provide to our community, trip purposes for our fixed route and what trip generators we have for each of those routes, a review of the ridership trends for each of the services. Now that we've operated microtransit, which we call transport, for over 3 months, it's a good time to let you know how that's doing and what kind of information that we have received thus far. And then lastly, a path forward as we continue on. Thank you, Jenny. A quick overview of the types of services that we provide to our community is our fixed route service, which consists of 6 fixed routes. Our paratransit, which is a requirement by the American for Disabilities Act, and our new microtransit branded as Transport. On the fixed route service, we currently have 6 fixed routes. See if we can get that next slide, Jenny. And these are the current 6 routes that we provide, and really the purposes that they serve. So Route 1 is the Olive and Morton corridors. Route 2 is Henderson and Westfield. Route 3 services East Porterville. Route 4, the Porterville Development Center and the college, as well as a couple schools. Route 5 services Morton Avenue and Henderson. And then Route 6 was implemented to serve J Street, the new shopping center out there, and specifically, I think back in the day, was created to serve the family health care center that did not have transportation at that time. As we look at, and there's a current, that's the original service map of the fixed route system. You can see it's a spoken wheel design that we've discussed in the past of looking at opportunities to make it more linear and user-friendly. And this is what's happened from really the beginning of the year, but more importantly, the dramatic decrease in ridership that began in March of this year with a 28% decrease. It followed on that in April with 59% decrease, as noted in the staff report. As things started to begin to open up, we did see a little trend of an increase in ridership, very slightly in May and June of 3% and 6%. And then as new orders came, the ridership declined 9%. Overall, since March, we've seen a 70% loss of ridership. And in this graph, I've identified really the trip generator or generators for each of the individual routes to help you understand. Now, Route 9 is a temporary suspension requested by the Tulu River Tribe of California. We hope to work with them on a plan to reopen that. Route 7 and 8 was a part of our elimination of Phase 1. Those are eliminating due to low productivity. We've also adjusted the service hours a little bit, operating Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Next slide. And I think this is a graphical view that really shows what has happened on the fixed route service. And the steep drops are actually holidays where we didn't transport anyone. But you can see the trend really dramatic when the governor's order to stay at home. All right, next slide. Here's some key performance metrics that we wanted to call out, what's currently happening on your 6 fixed routes. Really, our goal, our benchmark is 15 passengers per vehicle service hour, and we're barely meeting half of that on 4 out of the 6 routes. You can see in red, Route 4 and Route 6 are only transporting 4 and 5 passengers per service hour. What does that mean for a whole day? Well, most of the routes are carrying about 100 passengers each, except for routes 4 and 6 are at 44 and 62, respectively. And here's, again, we want to revisit what has transpired over some time with our original fixed route system. So here's the fixed route map with, next slide is, you have a message. This is phase 1, where Route 7 and 8 and Route 9 were no longer in service. And really, Route 7 and 8 were duplication of existing routes. Thank you very much. Or routes that serviced areas northeast Porterville that never developed fully as originally planned. Phase 2, as you look at it, there's some consideration of eliminating further low productive routes or temporary suspending them. This is a map that what would the fixed route system look like. Really no fixed route service on the south part of town, which would be serviced by microtransit. And as we have continued to evaluate linear route designs, this is a design of the 6 routes, providing directional service on each side of the main corridors that for future consideration. But we're continuing to work on it. We're trying to refine, make improvements. We can't stand still. We try to bring you options to consider in the future. ADA, we'll move on to our paratransit, which is required by the ADA. It is a complementary service to fixed route, specifically for seniors, handicapped, disabled, and those that cannot use fixed route service. It's origin to destination based, and we operate a curb-to-curb service requiring 24 hours in an advanced reservation. With this type of passengers, you can expect a dramatic decrease in ridership as well. And this graph shows that this decrease, I apologize. In the staff report, it described a 31% decrease in March, 68% decrease in April. We did, as things started to open up a little bit in May, we saw a 43% increase, but then lost that in June and July. We're currently averaging only 9 passengers per day, which is about 1 passenger per hour. This is an extremely expensive service. It takes a lot of time to transport these folks and a lot of resources, but it is required. We can't stop. We have to provide a complimentary ADA service to our fixed route, operating the exact same hours of service. So it can't be operated 4 hours a day. It has to be the same of what we offer on fixed route at no more than twice the cost that we charge on fixed route as well. As a quick recap on the requirements. And we visited those performance metrics just a minute ago. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. We had options, and we were super excited to be able to quickly offer microtransit, which is technology-based. It's on demand, really similar to Uber. However, we do offer shared rides. So in Uber, that vehicle is yours, and you're riding along with your driver. But here, we'll pick up other passengers along the way. That makes it more cost-effective. But with microtransit, it's real important to understand that we're using technology to keep the costs down. Really striving to, with the opportunity to use your smartphone, you can reserve rides instantly. However, we do still allow folks that don't have a smartphone or are not comfortable using a smartphone to be able to call in and schedule a ride. Surprisingly, about 65% of our trips are still called in over the phone. So it is requiring more staff than we originally anticipated. We look at the service area, really mimics the urbanized area for the Federal Transit Administration, which includes Strathmore. And so that's why we wanted to provide microtransit to all within our urbanized area. We started in the middle of April and finished that month with the 271 trips. We thought it was pretty good. But month after month, we saw increases, and as of July, those increases equaled 400% from the time that we started, and it's just really tremendous. It speaks to the planning and the ability to quickly implement. We partner with Transloc, which is a technology provider that we use for microtransit. And they told us that we were one out of 1,500 clients that have shown a positive increase month after month during this pandemic. So it's really wonderful. And just today, not to share accolades, but it's interesting that being able to quickly implement new services that the community embraces. The American Public Transportation Association, APTA, formally invited us to be one of the keynote speakers for their virtual conference in September to tell our story about microtransit and how successful it has been during this pandemic, giving others, other members of our community different options to get around. Here's a graphical view of that really day-to-day ridership, just an upward trend every day that we operate week after week. We are starting to see a little plateau in August. It's still about a 6% increase from July, but I think it is the economy, some of the employment checks have run out, and that could be the cause of it. We are doing a survey. We're going to be starting that next week, a survey of our passengers to get an understanding of their thoughts on this and the purposes of their trips. So I apologize for not having that available to you tonight. It is performance-based. That was the key, one of the key objectives for this microtransit is to be able to pick up a passenger within 15 minutes from the time that they're requested. And so here's a graph of how we're doing on the hour, and you can see throughout the entire service day we have met that 15-minute performance mark. And it also is a trend of really the actual ridership where it's really light early in the mornings and then continues to build, peaking in the midday, and then flattens out for the rest of the day, ending at 8 o'clock, at 9 p.m. Here's another performance metric when we're gauging, well, how is the performance actually meeting up? The industry average is actually 3, which we think is great. You're doing a good job, maybe not great, but you're doing a good job at transporting 3 passengers per hour. Our goal is to get at least 4 or 5 passengers per hour, and I think we have some strategies to make that here in the near future. Here is if you want to know, well, where are folks riding from? This is their origin, and I find it pretty equally throughout our community. There's not really any hot spots per se that are unequal to one side of town or the other. We do see a lot of activity in the downtown area, which is a result of folks taking fixed route and then using microtransit for the last mile of their trip. And that was one of the objectives for the service. And some of the hot spots, like the Target and Walmart shopping area, that's folks have either already been there shopping, and then that's where they're asking for a ride to go home. So not surprising. Well, where are they going? To the north, we actually have had about 10 to 15 passengers going to Strathmore, spread out pretty much evenly through the community into commercial zones or retail. Major employers such as, on Plano, the Foster Farms, sorry. Foster Farms is one of the red hot spots. You have on Olive, Town and Country, and then Walmart Distribution is also identified that area as a hot spot to the south. We've had a little bit of activity out at the airport from folks coming in and using the service, so that's a good sign that the word's getting out. Here's some metrics on really the cost. What is it costing the city to operate each of these services? And I think this is important to note, that microtransit, because it's using technology, is actually the cheapest to operate on a vehicle per service hour. It doesn't transport a whole lot at this time, 3 passengers per hour, but that will build. But the cost per passenger is actually the lowest as well. And it builds upon fixed route, which is not surprising, but those costs per passengers will go down and the cost per vehicle goes down the more people ride. And then the most expensive service, which is a typical industry average, about costing $110 to transport a person when you factor in all the staff time, vehicle, gas, maintenance, it's super expensive. So in conclusion, we want to discuss like a path forward for council's consideration. And truly, we have funding in place to help us weather the storm. You know, the federal government has provided $7.5 million, or 7.8 in total, to allow us to weather the storm. But we just can't sit there idle. We need to continue to look for strategies and options for success, and then sustainability. And if you look at our transport logo, it's really quietly describing our strategies of going green, environmentally friendly, going quick, and going portable with different modes of transportation in the future. We got car sharing and van pools. There's bike and scooter sharing opportunities in the future. So we took that opportunity to include that in our transport logo. Wrong way. But we also need to look at the technologies that we're providing, and are we operating them as cost effective as possible. And this is a picture of our, the city's first fleet charging station facility, and we still got work to do. We need to work with our vendors to incorporate smart charging and schedule charging and peak load management to ensure that we are charging these buses at the lowest possible price. And then lastly, this is a trend that we're starting to get into, but one that I think will be the future as mobility as a service, where a single application can give you all of your transportation needs. It's hugely popular in Europe and making its way into North America. And we've really got two critical pieces already in our mobile application with fixed route and microtransit. We just need to start adding the additional modes and making it user-friendly, incorporating in-app payment and other technologies, other third parties, maybe even Uber and Lyft if they continue to operate in our community. So finally, it's some considerations that staff developed for council. I'd like to just briefly go through, like fixed route is a consideration to eliminate or continue to suspend low productive routes. Decrease headways. We're operating at 40 minutes. Means 40 minutes, every 40 minutes a bus goes by. It's not very convenient, and we want to go fast, and so decreasing those headways is a consideration. And the last is consider cashless fare system with this pandemic. We still offer passengers to pay with cash, but as you know, many, even the fast food restaurants or even retail businesses suggest that you pay with something else other than cash. And this is an opportunity to streamline the operation, lower costs overall by expensive fare collection systems. Moving on to dial-a-ride service, we really need to be stringent on our efficient management strategies, not scheduling drivers when there's no rides, and being diligent in getting those folks off the road or clocked out when there's no more rides scheduled for that day. We're right now offering more service than what is required, and so there's consideration to tighten up dial-a-ride a little bit more and bring it in line with fixed route. And then adding technology to help reduce the cost of the service, making similar advances in scheduling rides based on technology and not relying on staff so much. What do we do with microtransit? It's got a 400% increase. You know, what else can you do? Well, we need to continue, just like Dollarite, is be efficient in our management strategies. We need to have more of a presence on social media and the newspaper and radio, marketing the service. We've already begun to have requests from folks outside of our community, such as Springville, Terabella, Woodville, and Lindsay, considering to expand in those communities. That's a consideration, and then really to streamline the operation. In-app payment features is something that we really think is the future, and a monthly pass, which may be costly, but still affordable and cost savings to folks in our community. So tonight, really would like to just receive some feedback and direction from the City Council, and based on those recommendations, we would like to, or that feedback, we'd like to develop some recommendations for future council's direction, and in order to really be transparent and get the community's voice on these recommendations, is hold a public hearing in the future. Way we're upfront with the community of what's happening, what could be happening. That's the conclusion of the staff report, and happy to answer any questions.
Mayor,
Yes.
I would just like to note that at the TCRTA meeting this week, Ted Smalley was very excited and congratulated the city of Porterville for its microtransit and increase of 400% usage. And of course to Mr. Tree for thinking outside that box to create that, generate that participation of individuals who want to use microtransit. So I just wanted to acknowledge that at the meeting, it was brought forward, and Mr. Smalley was very excited for the city of Porterville and congratulated them.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley is always complimentary of the city of Porterville when it comes to projects that Mr. Tree is involved. And I had a question. Initially, when there was a route that was removed, it was very difficult for some to even consider the transport. And I know that in, I think it was 8, was it Route 8? Okay. I had gotten some phone calls because there were some people that wanted to continue the bus route, and finally, I believe they began to start using the transport, and there has never been a call again, and I believe they've become satisfied with the service, that there is something that was there for them. Okay, council members.
Mayor?
Yes.
I personally like the idea that, we extend to Terabella, Springville, and Lindsay, that way we can get those people that are, wanting to shop in Porterville, we get that benefit, as well, giving them an opportunity to come in for doctor's appointments and whatever else they need here in Porterville. And I frankly would sure wish Mr. Tree could get something to UCLA so I can, for my benefit. No, just kidding. But
I'd like to add that I think we should be looking at eliminating some of those low productivity routes and reduce the services for the paratransit dial-a-ride. Doesn't seem to be really, and putting our efforts into the transport by increasing the market and expanding, and anything we can do that would increase that, because that seems to be where people are drawn to. And we can tell by the data that has been shown to us today, this evening, that is certainly the way to go. I think it also helps in terms, and I may not be correct, but I believe it may help in terms of TCRTA as we look at a regional approach that we have a program that really does work and could be implemented in other areas. So I believe that this is really an opportunity for us to change the way people think of transit and look at it in terms of the transport, that is the one that really, or microtransit is a key for us.
Thank you. Councilmember
Mayor.
Peñalosa?
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I think you did a good job in providing an overview, and metrics don't lie. You know, data is there, and it supports that the microtransit program and this new way of seeing, or I wouldn't say new because, you know, Uber and Lyft exist, but the way that cities can adopt this new way of transit, or you know, this new creative way of doing it here in rural California, in Tulare County it's, you know, we see it's there, and so it's the future of the area, and I appreciate the way that you formatted the considerations for the three different areas: the fixed route, the transit, dial ride, and the microtransit. I'm in agreement with everything that you've shown us to consider. As we move forward to get public input, I'm very interested to see, you know, what the public will, how they'll consider these considerations and what they think about them. I did have a question in terms of the microtransit and the transport. So, has there been any issues with folks that haven't been able to pay through, or is it a cashless fare system, the microtransit, or are you providing cash and in-app payments?
Thank you, Councilman. A great question. Really, to answer right now, we do still accept cash and other fare media that we offer on our fixed route services, such as magnetic tickets and smart cards. We would like the opportunity to start offering a cashless payment service that we think will be advantageous. However, there are challenges with that and getting to a cashless environment, and those are the folks that are unbanked, that don't have a bank account to set that transaction up in the app. Industry has really offered 5 recommendations to help the unbanked transit rider. One is to continue to offer cash and eventually fade that out as your payment solution expands and improves. The second is you see gift cards that are what they call closed loop gift cards. Once you've expended the funds, they're no longer used. You can't reload them, but they're everywhere. And that's an opportunity for folks to walk into their nearest gas station, buy a $10 transport card, and then use it on whatever service they want without having a bank account. And the last option that I'd like to discuss is what they call an open loop, which is typically backed by one of the major payment providers such as Visa and MasterCard. Is you can buy a gift card and then register it. You have to give some personal information, but then you can call up, or you can reload that that gift card, so to speak, and it has some extra value by having it backed by Visa and MasterCard. So we're trying to consider all of those, what will and will not work in our community as we consider a cashless fare system, but there's real savings if we can do it right by not having to manage these expensive boxes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree that, you know, it probably drops the cost of having to, you know, to have a, you know, cash system. But I do want to just make sure that we consider those folks that don't have, like you're saying, a bank account. But I like those ideas that are out there already, you know, like going to your local gas station within the city limit, or going to the portable transit, I don't know, like, and purchasing one of these cards, magnetic cards, to be able to utilize that as a way to pay, I think is a way that we can solve those issues. But I appreciate you answering my questions, and thank you so much for all your hard work. I think it's an exciting time for us, and really excited to be, in Porterville right now and living in Porterville in this time.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. I did want to point out that I support the in-app payment as well as any kind of prepaid options that I think we could implement, mostly because looking at expanding the service would probably, I would have to see, or you'd have to look at a study, but terrain and distance and things may affect the overall cost efficiencies, as well as if we don't have the resources in place, they may be focused in other areas for a longer period of time, and therefore utilization locally could be limited. But that would be one of the reasons why I would support any prepaid options, because it would allow for us to expand the fleet possibly, but also looking into any of the major employers who happen to fall into those hot spots, if they have any programs to reduce the carbon footprint for their employees or even for their shoppers, because it'd be considered a mutual benefit to be able to receive those shoppers, whether they cover part of the fare or there's some kind of program we can implement that gets those people there, so that we're creating a mutual benefit, a three-way benefit for the rider, us, and those businesses. I think those are all great ideas, and I appreciate all the report that you put together.
Councilmember Stowe, did you have anything to say?
No, I mentioned earlier that, I really agree with trying to expand it to our outer communities. But, I also want to say that how much I appreciate the work that Rich put into this and what he does for the, community as well as the city. But, I think we have some outstanding employees. Our department heads and support staff are just wonderful. Probably the best in the valley, if not close to the state.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tree, thank you very much for all the information. We have given you a lot to work with to bring back to the public hearing, and I look forward to hearing the public comments if we receive any at the meetings. It is, this is such an asset of what we have. I attend the Tcag meetings, and I'm saddened to hear that in another neighboring city, they have the Mayo cars that are sitting there, and it's just there. But thank you for all the work that you have done for us, and we'll bring it back. Thank you with the direction.
Just a couple comments, if I may. You were talking about the cashless or the unbanked, as Mr. Tree. It's been the same issue that Maria Bemis and I have been talking about with regards to utility payments. We have how can we meet, I'll be fascinated, this is where you see overlap of technologies and how they can be applied differently, because it's one that Maria and I have talked about a lot on how we can serve a fair number of our population that is unbanked, and so they have to come and pay cash for their utility payments. And so it will be interesting to see what kind of solutions we can develop, not only for transit, but also for other city, especially for utilities that might be able to provide some solutions to them. You talk about technologies that can be implemented. It will be interesting to see in the TC RTA. I do think you'll see, if I were to speculate, I think you'll see Woodlake be, they kind of operate something very similar now. I was talking with Mr. Tree about this before, and kind of the expertise that he's going to be providing. I think you'll see Woodlake probably be a fairly easy, I don't want to say easy adopter, but I think it fits in line with a philosophy that they're kind of putting together. Similarly, if you kind of look at way funding is leveraged and those sorts of things. And so I think you'll see Woodlake follow. I think Farmersville also has the interest. I think they just don't have the expertise. And this is really where I think Mr. Tree's expertise and trying to provide how you can do this. You may have an interest, but how do you literally design a system? What are the different we work with Edison. There's other utilities that we don't work with. Those will be some of the interesting pieces. Working with PG&E, I have no idea what PG&E's programs look like because that's not our utility. So there's going to be some real frontiers that which might also present opportunities. You're now getting into another, through the Regional Transit Authority, getting into another utilities piggy bank, perhaps, in the broader sense. So there might be some opportunities which was, I said this about the RTA, sorry to mix the metaphors, but, the RTA needs us kind of more than we need them. We need them from funding availabilities. I wouldn't say we need them from an expertise standpoint. And so perhaps those are some of those funding things and some of the strategies that we can adopt. So it's exciting to see. He hasn't put it in the presentation. I can I'll raise it now. The next step in this is autonomous microtransit. That's where this technology is heading, where now you have on demand by it's where it's going to be. And I heard members of the Transportation Commission talk about this a couple years ago at the league conference, saying this will be here by 2030. You will have autonomous ride-sharing capabilities. So, lots in the future.
I'm gonna find a new place.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move on to the next item.
Do you need to have a motion to set the
I
public hearing?
apologize.
Yeah, we need a motion. Thank you.
Yeah. Motion to set the public hearing for September the 1st for public input and for staff's recommendations to
Second.
be brought back on that date.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. There be no further discussion. Call for vote, please.
Councilmember Gurrola,
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye, it won't come off of mute.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye, passes unanimous, 5-0. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, number 14.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next item in order is consideration of a community civic event for outdoor dining in the downtown areas. Item will be presented by Jenny Byers. Let me begin by apologizing for the recommendation in this, that the City Council consider approval of this. Recommendation was intended to be that it consider this as a community civic event or direction as provided by the council, as we were still considering the issues of liability as contained in the staff report. And I just want to kind of frame it a little bit, and then I'll turn it over to Jenny. There remained, as at the time of the staff's report on last Thursday, significant issues of liability that we needed to address. The chamber, as the sponsor of the proposed community development, had, as they would typically do, and very helpful in working with the local restaurants and refining their interests, and I think that's been tremendously helpful for the council this evening. But as we've continued to look at what are the liability concerns and how they might be mitigated, I would be suggesting as we go into this that we're not necessarily looking at this as a community civic event through the chamber, but as a broader city program for that. The reason I bring that up is I want to try to avoid a conflict of interest for a member of the council to participate. If this is being pursued as a community civic event, would prompt a conflict of interest. I think we found in the time since the report from Thursday to where we are today, that it best serves the city that.
It's really not feasible, just to put it bluntly, to
Right.
do it through the chamber. So we are gonna reframe the conversation in terms of what the staff report says, and I just want to make that clear on the record, because I'm not gonna recommend or request that Vice Mayor Reyes leave the room, because I think even though the staff report has information about that, this has been a moving target, as we said even at the last meeting. And so really what we're looking at now is more of a direct city type program or regulatory scheme in light of the emergency. So that's how we're going to proceed with it, notwithstanding what was in the staff report. So because of that, I don't believe Vice Mayor Reyes needs to leave the room. So I just want to state that for the record. So, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Mr. Lawless.
See, I was maybe being too, not as blunt with that, but also acknowledging the error on my behalf and that the recommendation was incorrect. It was supposed to be looking at, not for approval, because we, quite frankly, didn't have a complete package. We
Well,
were
thank
still,
you for the
from
clarification.
Thursday, still trying to address what the insurance concerns would be. Obviously, you see in the staff report, the chamber was looking at being the sponsor of this, running into some significant financial challenges. I think quote was $400 a day in its serving as sponsor of this. So from Thursday evening until, I would say, till yesterday, still working on some of those questions. So although like I said, I do want to thank Jessica and the chamber for their efforts. It helped us a lot in defining what the interests are. And I think for the context of this conversation this evening, what are the council's requirements, expectations, interests, in looking at, I think there are 7 in total thus far. And I would look at it in the context of that there may be others, if they see others doing it, may want to follow suit as well. And there may be other non-restaurants that may look to how they might be able to do this as well. So with that, Jenny,
Yeah.
you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Lawless, Mayor and council members. Mr. Lawless and Ms. Liu are correct. We have been working diligently to get this before City Council today. On August 4th, council directed staff to work with the Chamber of Commerce to bring forward a community civic event to allow for certain sidewalk parking areas and street closures to be used by downtown restaurants in light of indoor operations being temporarily closed statewide due to COVID-19. We reached out to Ms. Jessica Joaquin with the Chamber. She then reached out to all of the downtown restaurants to see what it was that they were possibly wanting. She must have been on the phone every day, all day for a couple of days, and she worked back and forth with Ms. Phillips in my office to come up with what would downtown restaurants want. Like Mr. Lawless explained, we were still trying to work through the liability insurance requirements, and so it looks like we have a path forward for that. So I'll just go ahead and go over the ones that the 7 were looking at. It also was a matter of what is it you guys would like to see? How can we move forward with this? Let's bring it before council. Another suggestion that staff would like to bring forward is that we have been doing some research for other cities, their guidelines and their applications, and we'd like to bring something back to council that would document a procedure specifically that would include liability insurance requirements, that would include a site plan. It would be approved by staff, but it would at least include the parameters that council felt to be most appropriate. And so staff would like to bring that back at a later date. But for now, we wanted to talk about these 7 downtown restaurants that Ms. Joaquin worked with. So first of all is going to be the cellar. And hopefully council can all see this map. There was individual diagrams for each one of these locations included in the staff report. So the cellar, they actually wanted to be on Main Street, on the sidewalk, instead of in the parking lot in the back. And so that's the type of conversations that were had. What is it that would suit your restaurant the most? And so what they were looking for was approximately 50 feet of sidewalk closure. Then Morisco's, they were a little bit interesting in the way that they wanted to have the sidewalk as well as some stalls in the parking lot. Staff was worried about their safety, and so it was actually staff that suggested possibly closing Mill in this area. That is up to council's discretion. I do know that afterwards we had some conversations with police and fire, and they were concerned about essentially a permanent street closure that went on for a couple of months. And so that's something for council to evaluate. We were calling it the 77 Grill because that's what we have on record. I believe they want to be called Landing 13 is what they're looking for. And so they're looking for a parking lot. So they have access directly to the city parking lot on the north side of their building that they would have direct access to. And so they would be looking for some parking lot closure. Next on the list was Fugazi's.
and really this kind of started it, they were looking for the most space, and so they wanted to see what council's temperature was towards Main Street specifically, possibly the closure of some of the parking stalls, and then also along Oak Street, 3 parking spaces as well as the sidewalk, east side of Main. Sorry, I'm trying to read it. And then Chingones, they're located, this portion of Oak is very narrow, and so there's not really a lot of sidewalk, there's absolutely no parking, and so they were looking at the parking lot. They're actually not a restaurant that their servers would go in and out and bring them drink refills. They're kind of a go in and pick it up. But they did say that they had some patrons who would like an area to sit, and so they were proposing in the parking lot, 5 parking spaces specifically. And then the Vault Bar and Grill, conversations with them, he actually was not favorable to having parking stalls in the street. I'm not sure if he had concerns, but that was what Mr. Zenz expressed, that he would like to have sidewalk closure. This one's interesting because Taco Truck Cantina is also going to request some sidewalk closure. There is parking available here that they could then cross the street. And so staff was less concerned that it would be a street closure from Olive to Garden, or it would be a sidewalk closure, I'm sorry, from Olive to Garden, considering that there is a break between these that pedestrians could safely travel if they needed to get to one or the other. So that is the 7. I do know she also reached out to the pizza place, and they were not interested, or they didn't get back to you, is my understanding. Yeah, she had reached out to him. She was unable to get a hold of him. Don Vino's has their own patio. So some of these businesses, she did try to reach out to, but this is what we're looking at, a mix of sidewalk, parking stalls, in parking lot and on Main Street, and then street closure. And so staff is happy to discuss any of these that you would like us to. Ms. Hildreth can provide some information as far as the liability insurance requirements and what she was able to research in the short time frame that we had. And with that, staff recommends direction from City Council. I'm available for answers, as well as Ms. Julie Phillips is on the line, and then Ms. Brackeen is here in the audience. Thank you very much, Council.
So when they asked for the sidewalk and the parking stall space, what is the parking stall space for?
Do you mean in general, or are you?
In general, yeah, in general.
The parking spot spaces would be to extend the seating area in a manner similar to what staff had presented to council in the last meeting. Not necessarily specifically a parklet that is constructed like what you had seen last time, but just to be able to put barricades and be able to use that additional area.
So they would use all the sidewalk, and adjacent to that in the parking lot, the parking stalls put barricades and not seating.
Well, not necessarily. It depends, I imagine, on the depth of the parking. I muted myself unintentionally. I would imagine that, and again, each of these situations would be subject to a site plan and a conversation between the business owner and staff as far as how they're proposing to do it. It just provides additional space, which could possibly accommodate additional seating.
And they would also be able to do it in alignment with the guidance that has been provided. If we wanted to make sure that there was 6 feet between tables. I've seen a lot of things online. There's a lot of things circulating about other cities that are doing this, and they have the tables spaced out, 1 or 2 feet from each other. People are back to back. We felt it was the council's interest to make sure that even if you are in this area, there's still 6 feet separation between the people sitting at the tables. And so this would ensure that they had enough space to accommodate the spacing.
And I think Ms. Hildreth would also echo this. I'd recommend, even if you weren't using the parking spaces adjacent to the sidewalk, I think you still may want to consider their closure as a safety barrier with some type of, I still think that there's a concern that if the sidewalk is closed and you have tables, you have essentially an outdoor cafe, if you have folks that are parking, diagonal parking in that area, I think there still exists some risks that we should consider mitigating. We have an experience here at City Hall a couple years ago where a person experienced a medical emergency, pushed the accelerator and ended up slamming into City Hall. So it may be something to consider if the council does support doing a sidewalk closure, and also consider adjacent parking stalls to allow that additional barrier with some type of protection provided.
Particularly in the areas where there's not landscaping and trash. Along Oak Street, that was one of them that recently had improvements done, that there's trees and there's a bench and there's more trees and a trash can, and there's kind of a barrier there along Oak, but Mr. Lawless is correct. In a lot of these spaces, there isn't.
And especially Main Street, where you're having nose-in parking as opposed to diagonal parking.
Thank you.
So, my comment, I have a few comments on I'll start with the street closure part. The street closure to me isn't necessarily a favorable way to accommodate, just because of general access. Now, if there's a conversation to have half of the street closed in one direction, because there is an alley that can allow access to get out of there. There's only a couple of businesses that are on that block that would even have traffic, if any. And one could even have access from the other side and foot traffic, but to close the entire street might be a little difficult to achieve, especially from an access point of view. So that would be troubling. Although the sidewalk looks like it could probably work for some of their access. So that would be for the Morisco's location. I did have also for the Fugazi's location, and even through the testimony that was already given in relation to Fugazi's, the north side of Oak Street seems like that access could be limited for those not participating in this activity, only because it limits the ability to access other businesses that are to the east of that. So if there's any way to enhance the east side of Main Street sidewalk, maybe with some additional space, but not afforded right directly into the parking spaces, but just as a buffer, I suppose, for any spacing that needs to occur. That seems to be more of a logical, especially given that the testimony included that the weather can be a little bit limiting and on that Oak side of the street. The last time we heard in relation to Fugazi's, I know Chingon's is in a little bit of a different situation, and I did wonder a little bit about how the safety of people crossing there. Although it doesn't seem to be too much trouble, there is a lot of foot traffic in that area because of the transit center. So as long as there's some safety put in there, it seems that there could be a carve out and some spacing for seating areas. And just historically, I do believe people get in their cars, and there has been evidence left behind that they do sit in their cars and eat there anyhow. So maybe making that an official, at least for temporarily, a designated place. With the Hangar 13, that parking lot does seem to have a little bit more access, and there's their entrance does face there, so they would have the ability to serve that area and observe that area. So whether it's the entire space or not, I'm not unfavorable to looking at how that works. I think it mostly just any street closures or parking closures, I think are not favorable to putting tables directly in that. Some of those areas, not that I know for a fact, but some of the slope on the street isn't exactly even, so that's a consideration as well for the safety of those that are working or that are seated in that area, and then stepping up and down. And I think that's some of the comments. I may have some other ones, but I just wanted to make sure I got those out.
May I request clarification on an item?
Yes.
If Vice Mayor Reyes could repeat the comment that he had about Fugazis in the Main Street area. I'm sorry, you were wanting to maintain access along Main Street in that sidewalk area?
So, yeah, and if someone's walking along the other side of Main Street and they needed to cross to get to the eastern portion, that would be towards Second Street, that they may be prevented from doing that, and they may have to go in a zigzag and then cross, maybe even at the alley, which is not really necessarily a safe way to cross, even to reach the parking lot that's on the other side. So that sidewalk that's on the north side of Oak Street, there, I'm not thinking that is a good place to block necessarily, because there is I would say that some people may need to traverse that area to get to other businesses, understanding there would be some agreements with neighboring businesses, but I think that might be a little much for someone to see, having to cross in a Z pattern to get to another area. But I don't see it as impossible. I just see that it could be viewed as inconvenient to someone who's not there to eat at some of the establishments, who's just there to either walk or to maybe go to a different location.
Okay, so no on the closure for Oak Street, but the closure of the sidewalk along Oak, but the sidewalk along Main can be closed?
I view that as something that could be done as well, as long as there's precautions taken for any cars that are driving near that, which could mean just barricades in the parking stalls. They may be afforded some extra space by having that blocked off. But and plus, by their own testimony, it seemed like the weather might not have been too favorable to having the sun in that on Oak Street. So those were just my considerations there.
Agreed, and I'll confess that staff had encouraged the consideration of the closure of that portion of Oak, because that is the primary entrance into the restaurant's cooking area. And so I anticipated a lot of foot traffic from wait staff coming through that area, but certainly that doesn't require that it be closed.
So I have a question, Mayor, if I may. On Oak, if you close that for the sidewalk, people could go, if they're wanting to go to the west side of Main Street, they'd go along either Main Street or down Oak and cross there at Subway, and then go about their business wherever they need. If they want to get to the other side of Fugazis, they could go up along Main Street, and yes, they'd have to cross at Mill and then come back down. I don't think that's a big inconvenience for people, because individuals, I believe, want to support our businesses. So I'd hate to see us reduce their ability to gain additional customers or to serve additional customers by blocking them and not allowing them to use the Oak Street sidewalk.
Just for clarification, Julie, did you say that they were not looking to have seating in that area? It was just for their wait staff to be able to use?
Right.
So it's not to support.
So it's for the
It's not to support.
waiters.
Right, so I guess it's really a question of, do they not have a means to be able to serve through the downstairs?
If Ms. Burkeen is present, and she might be more familiar with the layout of the restaurant, I've not had the opportunity yet to go into it.
I know that that was a future expansion project, that they were going to improve the downstairs. I just didn't know what condition it was for them to be able to avoid the sidewalk area. It's really, the question is really begged is, what's the county's health order on that? In terms of serving, I don't know. Well, because they regulate restaurants, so to what extent are they allowed to serve in a public setting?
I don't think it's necessarily prohibited.
Okay.
The other alternative, because, I mean, looking at it, I know there's some ramps there that actually would prohibit any tables or anything, so a lot of it would be walking access, but if there were a way at that corner to create a clearance where there isn't necessarily people seated, so right there at the corner, as people are crossing, so there would be access for someone, because even though I might not view it as an inconvenience, there may be somebody who may be limited in either energy or some other factor that might not be able to make the determination that there's a closure and then get there and then somehow feel impacted. And along with trying to help the businesses, I think that we need to consider, that people aren't out as much, and if they are out, they're there for a specific reason. So if there's a way to look at that corner and create an access where it doesn't necessarily impede someone's ability to feel like they can get from point A to point B, I think I'd be satisfied with that.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was the waiters. I guess I didn't tune into that part, but yeah, they have that secondary entrance in the bottom and they go up the stairs. I'm surprised that they haven't opened that alcove there at the bottom. There used to be Figueroa's, because there's enough room in there to put some seating. They own that, don't they? The bottom part?
And I believe they are looking to do that, correct, Julie?
Okay.
I think it was it was actually only 1.5 feet in that alcove.
Is it? Oh, wow.
Okay. It wasn't as much as we thought.
But they would, to whatever extent they could, maybe that could be a bigger table that could help extend into that area.
And I suppose just as another, I mean, if we were to somehow, highlight the fact that the alleyway is there and potentially not make that as much of a, make it available for some foot traffic or something, there is another way to get by. But my main concern is just having someone have access to other businesses who aren't, when they're not participating in this.
One of the
And would you have signs saying detour or something to alarm, to let people know that the sidewalk is being utilized? Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Actually, if I'll bring up that point too. I thought that the wayfinding signs would be very helpful to make sure that in advance there was plenty of opportunity for someone to see that there was going to be a closure on the sidewalk, as well as somehow standardizing and some foresight into how the marketing aspect of this would work, and maybe looking at the standards that we would allow for signage on the business's behalf to be able to promote the event, or not the event, but the fact that they're having the outdoor seating.
One of the projects we wanted to encourage prior to the reconstruction of Main Street, so it's something we've been having for a while, is re-educating people as to where parking was in adjacency to the businesses. We have some very informal information already. A lot of people don't know the businesses that you can access from the back, so they get frustrated when they can't access from Main Street. And so that's something that we've been wanting to educate people on anyways, just how close downtown parking is to businesses. And so this may be a good time to really try to encourage that re-education of parking and all of the great things we have to offer downtown. Councilmember Stowe, did you have any questions?
Not yet, Your Honor. I'm still
Okay.
sitting here trying to visualize how we can make this work, but
Okay.
perhaps later. Thank you.
On the taco truck, cantina, they're asking for the sidewalk plus the spaces, 5 spaces, I'm sorry, no. I don't know where I'm at anymore.
I think it's 3 parking.
100 feet.
Oh, I can click on it.
You can't look at you.
8 parking spaces.
Okay, parking, okay. And there's not a business adjacent to that right now, the 2 buildings?
They do have 2 buildings. It appears to just be in front of the one. I'm sorry, Ms. Joaquin was speaking up. It's actually only 3 parking spaces they wanted. Do you know if they wanted the northern side of, you know how they have the 2 entrances? Did they just want it in front of a portion?
That other one, okay.
I think in general, all the businesses really just wanted the sidewalk. The parking spots were more to have an entrance to their, like, just so there's not cars parked right up against the people in the city. So they don't necessarily want to close it in terms of seats here, but just for access.
It's security, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking too, just, and if there's a, you know, if they need to put a rack for a storage tub to clean tables or something that's not going to be somebody seated there, just some auxiliary space that would allow functionality. I think that would be something favorable.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yes, definitely.
a comment I wanted to make when we were talking about, is it landing 13 or hangar? Landing 13 and Chingones, and I think those are the 2 in parking. I think I'd recommend that the council consider providing, this was discussed just a little bit at the last, I know that we have at our corporation yard, we have the bright orange plastic hay-rail, you fill them with water or sand, and they can, and we've used them for community civic events for security. I know Mr. Knight has done some research on some of the different things that are available. There is some, I would say, they can be skinned to have, wood, look like wood planking. They actually can be done very well and still serve the purpose that they wish. And I think they're like $1,500. Is that a fair number?
So there's depending on the location, we've looked at a number of different prototypes that's being used. I've been flooding Jenny's phone with text and pictures. And so they range anywhere individually from individual barricade of $150 to $400 a barricade. So you can get as elaborate as you would like. And depending on the location, you may be able to go with a less expensive model that would provide the same amount of protection and security from any vehicles or moving objects. Once they're filled with water or sand, they become very heavy and become a very good, stable barricade.
And that would be something the city would purchase and lease out or provide for them for these particular.
Well, I'm suggesting perhaps the city consider purchasing these. I know it's not on your agenda, so we'd have to consider it, but I consider the purchase of some number of them. Maybe even if we get started at, I have authority at $5,000. I wouldn't want to be spending this money if it wasn't consistent with the council's direction. But, given kind of the price points that Mr. Knight spoke about, these can serve the city for, I'm going to still talk about the other side of COVID, where hopefully our community is able to come back together. Vice Mayor Reyes at the last meeting or meeting before talked about, we were having lots of conversations about security. We were using electric buses to block streets. It wasn't that long ago. And so having these in the city's inventory, so saying if we, and especially when it's our property and our liability that we're wishing to take, I might that way we also know there's not the question of what's provided we're providing it ourselves to protect our property and to protect our liability. So looking at something that has, and Mr. Knight showed me stuff that has, like I said, it's skinned with like wood planking, and then on the top has fake bushes that look like, I don't know what they're called, yeah, they're the boxwood, box.
Like Boxwood, I think
Boxwood,
that's
yeah.
at the League of Cities, they had talked about having these movable,
Yeah.
you could even put them, so if you had an event downtown, you could put them in the middle of Main Street, just to slow people down, so people weren't feeling as in danger. So and I agree with you, there's definitely usage for these objects, and I don't know what they would be called, but event-supporting objects in the future, and very usable. And especially, when concerning the aesthetics of downtown and how we ask folks to abide by those, us having the ability to demonstrate what those aesthetics could be in these types of objects, I think would be good.
Yeah, so I with the council's blessing, I think we could get going on purchasing some of these. We have some that are in our inventory now, but they're functional, is what I would say. They're bright orange, and we use them to, separate traffic from construction projects, and we've used them for community civic events. But these would have utility, I think, from an aesthetic standpoint. I remember some of those comments talking about wanting to have a nice appearance for this, and this would actually help with some of our community civic events in the future. In addition to that, I do think there is going to be additional funding that becomes available to cities for COVID-related expenses, which I think this would fit. So even with appropriated funds, I do think in time there will be fundings made available to cities for reimbursed costs of COVID, which obviously this would be an expense that we could submit for reimbursement because we're trying to support businesses in a COVID. Now, I'm not going to promise you there's money, and I'm going to talk about that later in my report, but I do think, I do believe that there will be additional funding, just as the state did as part of its budget for this year with the city at $740,000. I think and that could in itself be one of the reimbursable expenses. I mean, a little bit of this is, which budget pots do you take money from? This is one I think you could easily under $25,000 make some expenditures toward and have a nice product, and it would also be utility and aesthetics.
I like the consistency, the look that we would have in downtown rather than tents or something. So I would be agreeable. Along that discussion, the ambiance, I guess, of downtown, I was wondering, could we put any of those Christmas lights out? We don't want to draw everybody downtown, but we certainly would like it to look nice.
I know the lights, we keep the lights up. I know to be candid, I know Mr. Moore was talking about us needing to replace some of the decorations that we do put out in store. If he's on, Donnie, do you know what the status of the different, is he on? I don't know if he's on or not.
He was on. I think he still is.
He's on.
So I just think that would provide a nicer look,
Yeah, we can certainly.
be a little bit more impressive.
That's been part of our contract with Kyler? Is that Kaler? What's the name? Kaler. Kaler. Is that they do, typically, now we can reach out to them and say, hey, we'd like to kind of do preventative maintenance sooner than we usually do.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't they on in the trees all the time now?
They are, they just, they go out, and then it's part of our agreement with Kaler, they come and switch out some of them. We replaced a number of them last year, and it's just been a recurring. We are looking at replacement of some of the across-street decorations. I know that they've kind of used their life up.
As well, I know that I haven't looked lately, but some of the bollards, I know we had some that were out. So I think that if there are in an attempt to create a better ambiance, and as well as some just basic safety lighting too for people as they are, out and it does become evening time. That might be a benefit. But I also just wanted to add, thanks to everybody who's been looking into trying to do this. This is really creating a model that I think is following a lot of the guidelines that have yet to be spoken. And so by trying to do this, I think it creates a way for other communities to look at a practical approach, and that and then appreciate the chamber's work on this, and that they definitely are able to help in other ways that with their members and the marketing of this entire thing too. So I mean, it's if this whole thing isn't necessarily on their plate, I don't think it's a bad thing, because there's definitely other aspects that can be worked on.
I'm going to say I want to thank you, because with the information that you've already done in the outreach with regard to the restaurants as to what their needs, as to the numbers, that tells us as being proactive to support the businesses downtown, how important it is that we need to do our participation to make it safe for everyone, to adhere to whatever the requirements are for the insurance, for the liabilities, and that I'm in agreement with pretty much everything that was said out here this evening, with the sidewalk closures, with the parking spaces, with the, even was saying if we need to allocate $25,000 for somewhere to get the things that we need for the barricades. It's all to be helping the businesses to move forward. I know that as we move along the way, that this is a first for us, but we need to help and support our community. Councilmember Peñuelos, I didn't hear from you.
No, I think I'm in agreement with everything that's been proposed. My only concern throughout this whole conversation was the street closure with Mariscos. Having that whole street is a concern for me. But besides that, I know there was a public comment that stated that we don't support small businesses, but yet we have, almost given $500,000 of CARES Act funding to the loan program, and we're having this conversation today. So I think all of us on council right now, we're trying to work with what we are currently going through, and yeah, so I'm in favor of these different proposals, and look forward to having these open up for the public.
Thank you very much.
I do have a question, Mayor,
Please.
clarification.
Please.
In the Recorder, they ran an article on this, and they said that Wednesday, if it was approved Wednesday, they'd be able to start opening up, like sidewalk cafes. That's not true, is it? I mean, what's the process that we're going to have to go through in order to move forward with the sidewalk?
I think that's a great, I think that's a great question, so part of this is going to be how quickly can, because it's going to be recommended based on the information, that businesses provide a certificate of insurance to the city, individually to the city, of $1 million, naming the city with a certificate of insurance. Many of these businesses should already have that ability within their policies. If not, and I know Ms. Hildreth can speak to this more specifically, this isn't really a costly element. In talking with insurance folks, if they don't already have it, it's about $100. It's a $100 certificate of insurance to provide. So I think that's the most critical piece that needs to be required by the city, is that as coming into the city right away, that you'll provide the city a certificate of insurance, naming it as additional insured at a minimum of $1 million. We also, in the council's direction, has been helpful tonight in looking at what are the considerations we should be taking, which is providing secure precautions, looking at closing, closing parking stalls in proximity to where there is seating, having appropriate signage, showing where closures are happening and how to get to, there needs to be some wayfinding elements. So I don't think all of those are going to happen by tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that and add this. I'd recommend that a process be established, and it doesn't need to be an extensive process. It can be streamlined. I mean, it doesn't have to have a huge fees associated with it. It doesn't even have to have any fee associated with it. That's up to the council. But I think there should be a permit application that's filled out, certificates of liability that are provided, a site plan that's provided for the staff to evaluate so that it's real clear what's being approved. And I think that we've already found examples. So I think that we can get there pretty easily. But what will be required as far as, what we will grant and what conditions, and then what restrictions, and whether or not a particular, proposed area meets with the city's approval really comes down to what we get from the city council as to what they feel is appropriate. So that's where it's really important that we hear what you guys want so that we can then put that into the permit application. And we can either have all that ready for you guys next time, or if you guys think you can be that specific, you can give staff the authority, but you got to understand, staff's going to try to make the best of what you guys provide to them tonight if we're going to try to do this on an expedited basis prior to the next council meeting.
I did have one piece, and as you bring that up, one piece that I think should be added to the application is the amplification permit that we require for civic events. It can easily be, changed a little bit to fit this application, and whether that's to allow, whether it's live or canned, and by live, I mean, I don't mean a full band out there, but if there's a guy that's playing guitar and that somehow is the ambiance and the space affords that, and that's something that they want to do, and he's amplified, or if they're just going to simply be announcing whose food is up or anything like that, but just for the sake of the noise, of the sound levels, neighboring businesses, because we've had issues with noise on Main Street and different things, and going away from an amplification permit, I think would be venturing too far away from
Yeah, and I don't think we would plan on that. I think that part of what the permit application would provide, that they would need to abide by all other city regulations. They're also going to need to abide, that application would also require them to abide by the state regulations with regard to, especially with the ones that are in place right now, concerning how they can operate the industry standards under the California Department of Public Health. So all of that stuff will still be part of that process. That's why it's important to have that application process so it's real clear to the restaurant owner what they actually have to do. They still have to socially distance. They still have to have their operators wear face coverings. They still have to have those that aren't eating wear face coverings. They still have to, all those things. They still provide restrooms. The restroom facilities need to be available inside, and that is generally an exception that's allowed for these outdoor establishments. So all of those things need to be at least kind of, out there and addressed, and clearly amplification would be another one that would need to be discussed, because, it seems like a no-brainer, but, a lot of restaurants will want to have piped-in music from what they would normally have inside, outside. We got to decide whether that's going to be appropriate given where they are, whether or not they're going to want, provide for a guy with a guitar at some point. All those things would generally require a permit, and they're still going to require a permit. Even like you said, announcing orders online out on a speaker. They may have to just forego that and be willing to not, amplify that if that's what they're planning on doing. So that's why it's important to have a process.
Because I don't want to push this out any further. These businesses have really been on the edge, and I know other businesses well, I'm not forgetting all the others, but in this discussion, the restaurants. So I would agree with Marisco's, not closing the Oak, and also cutting back on Oak Avenue for Pagagis and find the secondary. But I'd also like to add in the application that is created, that if there are violations by code enforcement, that the application would be suspended. I think we need to let restaurants know that they do have to follow what's in the application and in the process, because otherwise we're not achieving what we're trying to do, and that is allowing for people to go out, or having people go out and enjoy themselves, but still have those restrictions of the 6 feet and everything else that goes with it.
It occurred to me too that you guys actually have the ad hoc business committee that you guys can
Oh,
utilize for this
that's
as
true.
well.
We can look at it.
Yep.
I think I was going
I don't know why I didn't think about
to
that sooner.
suggest that at one point, that if there are code enforcement actions or anything like that, and before it gets to the entire council considering whether to stop or limit something, that it go before there and kind of maybe give some helpful hints on how to comply ahead of time before it spreads throughout the entire effort.
Well, the ad hoc committee can actually help with the staff with formulating the parameters as well, if the council is amenable to that. So,
But the ad hoc committee,
Which is fine. I mean, I think the ad hoc committee should be involved. But my question is, the staff, do you understand, do you have any questions of what the council is looking for?
I think we have a pretty good understanding. We'll work with these businesses, and we'll provide a report at your next meeting on status. I think these deliverables aren't going to be available tomorrow. I mean, I think this is something that we can work
Correct.
on to try to target by as soon as next week. Some of this may be, I mean, it may look a little rough at first, and then
maybe a work in progress.
Yeah, I'm suggesting you might see bright orange barriers that will be swapped out over time, and but we'll work with folks to try to get them up and running just as soon as possible. And some folks will be ready to go before others. There's no doubts in my mind. But we'll develop we already have applications for different kinds of project proposals, so some of these things aren't new wheels that need to be created. I think the one of these timepieces is going to be getting, hopefully they can get their certificates of insurance in a timely, or any challenges that they might get. I will tell you, in some cases that offices are having, I've just seen it in insurance and those sorts of things, that because of reduced staffing and those sorts of things, sometimes documentation's being
Things are taking
difficult to
longer
secure.
than normal. Yeah.
Well, can I suggest if staff gets it ready next week or whatever, ad hoc committee can look at it, and if they approve it, then let's just go with it without coming back, and unless we just have a special meeting to approve it.
Is that a motion, Councilmember Stowe?
Is that a question?
No, a
Question to the
motion.
other
Is that a
council-
motion?
Question to the other council members.
I'd like to include in your motion that that this become a city program directed by the, directed and managed by the city staff.
And that
Overseen
is-
by ad hoc?
I trust staff and, and the ad hoc committee. I mean, we have a couple of council members on that, I believe. And if they approve it, let's get it going.
And also that it at least be reported out monthly as the emergency continues, there's the activity, just in general, without action necessarily being taken, just to report out on the activities.
I'm guessing that may actually
You
be
agree
every
to all those
meeting.
amendments?
But
I think we've extended the motion, haven't we? It started with the motion.
was there a motion? Did Milt say that was going to be a motion?
And then Virginia, Councilmember Gurrola added to the motion, and I think Vice Mayor Reyes added to
Motion,
the
non-motion.
motion. Would you summarize that, please, legal counsel?
I will try. Okay, so the motion, if made by Milt can decide whether he wants to make this motion.
Yes, it was a motion.
Is to have a city program directed and managed by city staff, but overseen with the ad hoc committee. And to provide for basically a permitting process, certificates of liability for insurance, site plan, so that it is business specific, and with oversight at every meeting, and that'll also provide for compliance with all applicable city regulations, state regulations, and require that any other permits that would normally be required would also need to be.
That's what I heard him say.
And probably also include the state's guidance on restaurant operations.
Absolutely will, yes.
And the
industry
city's face
guidance.
covering ordinance.
Yep.
Okay, since that motion was an overall inclusive, I will second that. If there be no further discussion, please call for vote.
Councilmember Gurrola?
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa?
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes?
Aye.
Mayor Flores?
Aye. Passes unanimous, 5-0. Does anyone need a break?
Well, I mean, we already have. We just have a couple of more items, or?
We just have another, I'm just asking. Okay, we move on then. Okay. Please.
All right, thank you, Your Honor, for your final item this evening. And actually, the subject that the schedule matter you just took up was probably the most important or one of the bigger elements of the COVID, which is how to deal with support local businesses in the face of the restrictions that they've had for no indoor in-restaurant dining. I'll just do a brief update. Just things to highlight. The Navigation Center opened today with modified, what's called the temporary occupancy permit, which does not allow residential overnight stay until, and it's a 60-day temporary occupancy permit. It does allow them to provide services. Operational hours are not beyond 4 p.m. And does not allow for that. So appreciate Turning Point and their folks because they've had the staff hired wanting to get going. It's been an obstacle of their contractor getting the fire monitoring and suppression system installed. So we're hoping to see that within the next 60 days under the terms of their temporary occupancy permit. But that was open as of today. We talked about the State Unified Support Team meetings that happened last week. I already shared. Maybe the results of those meetings will be seen in the weeks to come, but I didn't see any real strategies that the state delineated or I think found very useful in the conversations from that day, unfortunately. We are seeing consistent daily reporting through Porterville Developmental Center. We're seeing some ebbs and flows. I think the high that I've seen is 18 patients that were under care. Currently, there's 13 current receiving care at Porterville Developmental Center. Veterans State Testing Facility continues to operate the Veterans Memorial Building. I haven't heard yet as to status after the end of this month. The contract between the state and veterans was put in place through the end of August. I know the state has an interest to have that test site remain operational beyond August 30th, but I don't have that report. I haven't been told as of yet the status of that. CARES Act funding, and I mentioned that earlier. The city received an appropriation of $740,000. There was a San Joaquin Valley District of the League did a seminar on that last week. Hopefully what I say is going to be consistent with that. The city will be able to reimburse costs. It goes back to March 1st and goes through December 30th. We've already received our first advance of that, which was about $120,000. There's some further disbursements of coming of that. And there's basically a presumption. They said, we're pretty sure all of you have expenses that are going to be reimbursable. So here's an advance, almost like sales tax. Here's your advance of sales tax. We know you're going to have at least this amount. So we received, like I said, about $120,000 of the $740,000. And there's another release that's coming at the 1st of September. We do believe we'll have expenses well in excess of $740,000. And I spoke about in my staff report, and it's been well reported that Washington, D.C. went into their summer break, at least the Senate did, without either a CARES Act 2, which is called HEALS or HEROES Acts. Prognostication is that there will be some other type of local funding provided through the state and or through direct from the federal government. But and that's why I spoke about that earlier, looking at appropriations. I mean, and we use this in a lot of at the staff's conversations levels of what expenditures are we having that will have a future benefit. We use that a lot in looking at not just the now, but what will the utility be of this expenditure. So we're looking at technological upgrades. Maria and Ted Williams are looking at about $250,000 of technological upgrades right now of how we can to support telework. City staff has stretched itself out right now when it can, those that work in the office, working shifts so that we reduce our footprint. We have had some cases of positive, and it's kind of been, police department, public works, finance. So it doesn't, there's no real one industry, I would say, that it's had. It's your biggest challenge, and I appreciate Ms. Hildreth and Ms. Andrade, who have put together, always trying to figure out what's the better mousetrap. Dealing with asymptomatic individuals is a real challenge because you don't know, you can do all the health screening, temperatures, sign your affidavit that you haven't been around anybody that's had symptoms or you don't have any symptoms, and those could all be true. And you still have somebody in your workspace that is contagious. So, so looking at how we can really continue to operate as a city, and it's been a real, I would say, a team effort. Lots of accommodations that have been made with shortage of PPEs. You've had Public Works help out the fire department with Tyvek suits and those sorts of things when gowns aren't available. So there's really been a, kind of all for one for all kind of mentality through all of this, and really appreciate with all the challenges, the folks that come to work every day still and do their job and do it really well. So with that, my recommendation would be that the council make the finding that there continues to be the need for a declaration of local emergency.
I move that we continue with the declaration of the proclamation of local.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, okay. We need a second because I made a motion.
I'll second for,
Second for discussion.
Okay. So, the salons have been coming forward about we're not allowing them, but the salons have a different restriction based on that industry. Am I correct?
Yes.
Restrict, in what sense?
In that we're not restricting them from doing their business.
No, they're underneath state licensing, which
Yep,
has.
state licensing.
Right, which has said that hair and nail salons, well, hair, I'll speak hair specifically, and nails, I believe, if they can modify their duties to outdoors, they're allowed to do outdoor activities as well.
And there's actually been
Yeah, I do know one that has put them outdoors, and it looks like they're doing a pretty good job and having quite a few customers outside. So that's allowable, but you cannot do it indoors.
right.
Right, it's similar to restaurants. You're not allowed to have indoor dining, you have to have outdoor dining. Similarly, it follows for the personal services.
And the state has actually temporarily suspended some of the restrictions that would otherwise apply to the salons, so it makes it more feasible to try to do it outside. But the bottom line is you have to have that outside space in order to do it.
Yeah.
And I think
So
that's
there
going
is
to
a
be.
way, I guess that there is a way to do that. You just have to think outside that box. How can I meet the guidelines? Because they're not
Right.
guidelines set by the city of Porterville nor the city council.
Well, and that's why as we were having that conversation about restaurants, recognize there may be other businesses. Today, we're talking about 7 restaurants. There may be other businesses, and
Right.
hair salons or nail salons may be the next come that talk about how can they modify their duties consistent with industry guidelines and be able to do that in public where they don't have.
In right-of-way spaces,
right-of-way
similar.
spaces.
Yep.
Exactly.
Oh, I see.
I would anticipate we may see that.
Okay.
And,
Please.
and just for the record, Your Honor, if I may, I have not been contacted by Mr. Harden as referenced in Mrs. Harden's email or to you.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Please, go ahead.
in regards to the nail salons and the barbershops, do we know of any barbershops and nail salons that, they could apply for a loan program, right? Or, there's nothing that can stop them, right, to apply, and have we had any that have applied?
They would be eligible to apply, correct. As to whether any have, I'd have to defer to Ms. Byers. I would also say that the county's CARES Act funding that they made available, remember there was $5,000 to 200 businesses in each district at least. I know they were really trying to outreach to those independent. So what I would say is that in the 5th district itself, there's at least 200 of those individuals that would be eligible for $5,000 grants.
Thank you, and, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We have had some businesses that are interested. The problem is going to be HUD has very specific guidelines. You have to make a position available to a low to moderate income person. That position needs to be available for someone who, it's not a licensed position. And so the struggle with barber shops and nail salons and those kind of businesses for our loan program is they have licenses. So it would have to be a salon that had a receptionist, that position is made available to someone who doesn't have a specific license. We're having the same discussion with some of the medical facilities because they have registered nurses, and clearly that is an education process and someone, I can't go and do that. But so do they have positions available? Are they willing to train medical assistants in-house? And so we are having a little bit of a struggle identifying businesses across the board. We're evaluating them, each one separately. Mr. Ridenour is on the line, and he's been instrumental in getting this through, and so he can answer perhaps a little bit better if you have some questions about what the parameters are for the type of job that you need to be providing.
I do. I just have one question. You said they have to be licensed if they're in a medical clinic or whatever. How about, if they're custodial staff or something? Is that if that cleans it? And, are they eligible to get that money for them?
Oh, yes.
That, actually, I was going to bring that up, that even in salons, the person who sweeps the hair off the floor, the person who reorganizes the towels and the pieces that have to be together, as long as they're not touching a client, then they're eligible for that. So there are ways for people to create a position that would be able to support their activities, especially if they're limited in what they're able to do outside. This person may actually enhance their ability to continue to do business.
True.
And the restrictions that come along those, making it maybe tougher for maybe, employers or businesses that have licenses, that's coming directly from the guidelines or the restrictions that come with the CARE Act funding, right? Or
yes, Councilmember. Those are conditions from HUD. But as Ms. Byers is saying, we are working with several businesses. And some businesses, for example, some medical offices, they call on for medical assistants, but their medical assistants do not require any prior training. They're willing to train them. So as long as we get those assurances and the recruitment is done in that way, and the job description is written in such a fashion that is acceptable. So we're working with many businesses to try to get them along the way, and we have several applications that we're working on to get that going.
All right, thank you. I did have a barber that, and this is a question, and just to make sure it's clear to me, but in terms of the CARE Act funding, if you have the deferred action for childhood arrivals, which is like it's a temporary permit to be able to work in the United States, are they eligible for the CARE Act funding, or do they have to be specifically a legal permanent resident or U.S. citizen to apply?
So HUD has issued some guidance on that. I don't have it in front of me currently at this moment, but to summarize what their guidance said, it was written back to the city of Stockton several years ago in regards to legal residency, and so it doesn't outline specific that they have to be a United States citizen, but they do have to have a legal residency. Hope that answers your question.
No, it does. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
One point of clarification, if I may, also if the business owner themselves is low to moderate income, or if their income this year has, and for the foreseen future that we're seeing currently, can be shown that they are low to moderate income. We're working with business owners in that sense as well. So there are some small business owners that they are their only employee, and that they are low to moderate income, and so we're helping them with the applications.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there be no further discussion, we already have a motion and we have a second that we continue with the proclamation of local emergency. Please call for vote.
Councilmember Gurrola,
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye, passes unanimous 5-0. Thank you very much. We
And
will
if I
now-
may, Jason, your garage is larger than my house.
Oh, okay.
You know, we all have conditions when we build a home. My wife wanted a big kitchen, and I said I wanted a big garage. And it's come useful during COVID because my children are inside, and I lock the door, and so I'm able to have some privacy out here.
Okay, with that, we'll just move on to oral communications, okay? And there's no one in the audience. Do we have any oral communications that have come in electronically?
Yes, we have, Your Honor. This is from John Harden, 454 Balmoral Drive. It is so disappointing but not surprising to hear Councilman Stowe deny receiving my contact. I have Mr. Stowe's personal cell number and left a message on his cell. I can tell you Councilman Stowe's cell number. I can quote his cell message if you like. Again, not surprised that I have not been contacted back. When the community protested in front of City Hall asking for permission to reopen businesses, not one council member could take even a minute of their time to listen to local small businesses' concerns. If you do not care about small business and their struggles, that is your right. Let's just be honest about our contact attempt and in your lack of desire to respond.
Listen, I have every one of my voicemails right here, and not one of them has John Harden's number up. And I do not delete them. So,
Thank you.
yeah, let's be honest.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to other matters. Councilmember Gurrola.
I'd just like to, for the record, inform Mr. Harden that I didn't show up, and I know many of the council members didn't show up, if we have underlying health issues. That was a tough time during COVID. And so I have not exposed myself. I've really tried not to. So I support the businesses. I mean, the city council has done so much work to try to support within our limitations, support businesses. We cannot go beyond those limitations. Our hands are tied. And now you hear us talking about how can we assist salons. They are at our forefront, and small businesses are our backbone to our city. And we're doing everything we can to assist within our limitations. And I just want to thank the staff, and I want to thank the firefighters who have gone out in the field and to risk themselves to save property and lives out in the Southern California, I believe, have they gone to Northern California too?
Yeah, we have a crew, we sent our first crew out that's at the river fire in Monterey County, and then today we sent another crew to the Deer Fire, which is up in Contra Costa County. So they're both up north.
So I would ask our community to keep them in prayer.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Peñalosa.
Yes, well, I don't have a lot to say except, letting the community know that to stay safe still. And, we have these hot days that we've been having, and it's stay cool and know that, we have cooling centers available for the public when during operation hours, City Hall and the transit center are available for the public to be there when they're hot. And so, stay safe, healthy, and cool during this time. And that's pretty much it. And then just, seconding the comments by Councilwoman Gurrola, our firefighters going out there, the governor just issued a state of emergency with the fires going on just a couple of hours ago. And so You know, it's hard work going out there. It's a life and death situation, and they're out there right now, our portable fire department. So, really, my thoughts are with them, and can't wait for them to come back safely.
Thank you. Councilmember Stowe, is there anything you would like to say? Or have you said it all?
If I can get unmuted, yes, was there something I'd like to say? However, I want to tell all the fire departments that have been released to all the wildfires. You know, my prayers is with them and their families, and they get home safely. And to all the communities that are, dealing with these wildfires. I know that's something that, is out of control now, and we just continue praying for them, and we hope that everything works out. And I want to thank our staff. We work so hard and so diligently. I know you're rotating now, or you're shorthanded, and because of COVID and different issues, but things always seem to get done, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the council for showing the support to allow me to stay on the council here for some more time. And I also want to wish well all the firefighters that are going out there to fight these fires that seem to be popping up. A new one seems to pop up every day. And also for the citizens to make sure to check the website, valleyair.org, to see what the conditions are, because they did issue a warning that the smoke from these fires is drifting into the valley, is pretty typical because of the typography and geography here. So be aware that as you're outside, you may be exposing yourself to the smoke and the bad air that can come from some of these fires that are pestering us now. So hopefully everyone will make it home safe who's fighting these fires. And again, want to thank the staff for all the effort they put into looking into solutions. And although it may seem like the council has been opposed to doing some of these things, it's just taken the time and the thought to come up with some models that can really work for our community. So I want to thank everybody involved.
Thank you for that. There is a constituent in Councilmember Garola's district that has reached out to me, and it has to do with mosquitoes, and to that regard. And one of the things that she asked if this could be a subject in a future council meeting, and I would like to see that come, so we could at least have a discussion to that regard on the mosquitoes, mosquito abatement, and the history of where it's been in Porterville, and to that regard.
Would you like a motion considered to add it to the next meeting's agenda?
To the next.
Yeah, if you want to do that, we can do it as a motion to agendize it for the next meeting.
According to the handbook, there's two ways. Either a council member can request it on as a consent item to be scheduled, or the council can take action to have it scheduled tonight.
You can
Well,
take
we can
action
put
and
it-
actually get it on the
We can put
next
it on the consent to have it, we can put it on the
Oh, you
consent.
wanna do it that way? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
please. And then one of the things that I'd like to say with regard to our small businesses, how important they are. I'm one that desperately needs a hair salon. I don't deny that. I would be one to be there all the time. When they were reopened, I was the first one there to say, hey, put me back in the books and schedule me out. And guess what? We were closed again. I went to that COVID-19 support team visit because the state representatives were going to be there. The county were going to be there. It was important for me to be there. It was important for them to hear where Porterville was, to immediately state the impact of small businesses and how it's affecting, that there were businesses in Porterville that had not been open since March, and that we are trying to do everything to be proactive to support businesses through the funding that we authorized
and to work with everyone in the community. The state representatives are the ones that spoke of state licensing. They're the ones that brought it to the table at that meeting. They emphasized the ABC licenses. They talked about the hair, the nail salons, and barber shops, how because they are licensed through the state and how they have their restrictions, but they also worked with the state so that some of them could go into the outdoor activity of providing the haircuts, limiting to what they can do. And I have to say, I do believe there is a hair salon, and I know that there is a hair salon that did try it with setting up outside in their parking lot. And they thought out of the box, and so far it has been successful. As long as they adhere to the guidelines, I wish them the best. But I also wanted to state how important it was that the attendance was there to especially speak about Porterville with regard to the tragic fire and how it brought this community together. We were there. And I will re-emphasize how we grieved and we mourned with the families and with the department and with the community. As we move forward through the resiliency, this affected everyone in the city of Porterville, and within 3 weeks, as we move forward, we are dealing with the pandemic. We are dealing with COVID. This is new. And the stress and the impact is not just one person, but it has affected everyone, all the organizations. So going to that meeting and talking about businesses, organizations, school districts, the healthcare organization in our own city, how they have pleaded that we support them, and how important it is, because their stress is starting to be noticeable, and they want to be able to provide the services of the healthcare to take care of all patients. I may have said too much, but I became very passionate to say it. And to the staff at City Hall, I know that you have had a lot of stresses with the rotating of your shifts. And I know that COVID has impacted some of the departments, and it has put a stress on several of you. Please know how much that we support you, because the operation, where would we be without the water continuing? Where would we be without the water services and the trash services? The livelihood of Porterville, if we embrace it all together, we can make great strides. That's all I have to say. Mr. Lawless.
Your Honor, before you go on, can I make one more comment or just an announcement, I guess I would say. The family of firefighter Patrick Jones has contributed $75,000 for a scholarship in the memory of his name at PC. So I just wanted to let everyone know, and we're thankful for the family, and we still think of Patrick quite often.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawless.
Yeah, just a couple quick comments in talking about the fire, and I know it was a concern I had, and I know Chief Lapierre's here too, to know that the city is still in good hands. It's actually, we were fortunate to have some new officers join our organization. Plus, we had just, and I think I might have mentioned this, had just sworn in 4 new firefighters. Which I guess provided us the flexibility to be able to support the mutual aid requests. We are now tapped out, as they say. We providing our OES support today to the Deer Fire, and then a Type 6 strike team with 3 personnel on earlier this week, or yesterday, in fact. Basically, we are now over, we have contributed what we can, and so now it's protect the city. So, so I thought I don't know if Chief Lapierre, you want to say anything further about that, but I know that that's important to me, important to him, and wanted to convey it to the council as well.
Yeah, I want to make sure, just like the CM is talking about, that we are part of a larger program of Master Mutual Aid, and that we contribute to that Master Mutual Aid up and down the state as they would do for us. But at no time would we go past our max drawdown. And due to the fact of the council and city manager allowing the swearing in of our 4 new firefighters after they've been through a 7-week rigorous academy, the first academy we've ever done, and they all made it through. They lost weight and gained muscle through that whole thing. And then also we just secured a new battalion chief from the city of Hanford named Isaac Buller. His first day was yesterday. So he's an 18-year veteran and was here during our fire incident. And I just want to say how happy I am to have him, and for the guidance of the council and the city manager to allow those personnel to come on board has allowed us to have the flexibility to move forward. And I just want to thank you guys. So, but we're covered, and we will maintain our coverage always. So, thank you.
Is that the one they call Bull?
Yes.
Yeah, he's 6'4", 300 pounds.
I remember him, yeah. Should have told me you were doing that exercise. I could have lost weight.
They call him Bull, but he's more like a mountain. Yeah, he's a gentle giant, but he is a very fierce firefighter, and his leadership and understanding of the fire service is just added to the our cadre. And I remember, as council told me, get the best I can find, and he is one of the best. So I had his fire chief in my office for 2 hours bemoaning me taking him. So he left empty-handed.
Well, Porterville, he was very welcome to Porterville. I got to meet him. Ms. Byers, would you like to say anything? Caught you, huh? Mr. Knight? No? You're shaking?
We're designing restaurant eating areas.
That's what I saw how busy you guys were over there.
I think Mike is
Fernando.
realizing the planner within himself, so.
Ah, okay.
Everyone has one, they just need to find one.
I know.
Fernando didn't answer, he just shook his head no. Well,
not tonight.
thank you so much. With no further discussion,
If I can, we, next Tuesday,
Oh,
we
correct.
have not
Priority
master,
projects.
Capital projects, goal objectives. So you should see that agenda come out by Friday for next Tuesday's meeting. 6
Thank you
o'clock.
very much. With nothing else, 9:40, meeting adjourned.
Good night, everybody.